Show.
It's uncut, it's unfiltered. This is the show of shows. This is the biggest names in drag racing. No holds barred.
Speaking his mind.
I've never had a problem expressing my opinions, but what we're doing here is bigger than that. These are conversations that need to be had in an unfiltered way.
Exploring hot topics.
Drag racing's all I've ever done. It's all I care to do.
And spreading the gospel of drag racing.
I respect the history. I appreciate how far we've come, but I want more for this sport, and I'll fight for it. This is the great American motorsport, drag racing.
The West Buck Show starts in 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon, beautiful people. It is Wednesday, September 1st, 2021, live from the Drag Illustrated studio. It's the West Buck Show. Let's everybody clap. Come on. Let's give a little round of applause. Wherever you are, I want to tell you guys so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Whether you're watching along on YouTube, Facebook, listening to it after the fact via Spotify or Apple Podcast, thank you so much for being a part of this. I truly feel that your involvement, your engagement, your comments, your likes, your shares, it's like oxygen to us here at Drag Illustrated. We love engaging with you. We love talking drag racing every Wednesday, and we literally cannot do this deal without you. Today's show, it's going to be an absolute barn burner, I tell you. As always, Mike Carpenter, Murder Tundra, joining me in the studio at 2:30. I believe we will be joined by door slammer, superstar turned Top Fuel rookie, the one and only Alex Laughlin. At 3 p.m., we will be joined by Hulk Hagan, himself at 3 o'clock. And then at 3:30, we will bring on the one and only Chris Boosted Hamilton of Street Outlaws and No Prep Kings fame. I promise you guys it's going to be off the chain there. I said it. But before we dive into our guests and start talking drag racing with what I believe to be some of the biggest names the sport has to offer, I think it's time to introduce my co-hosts, the homies here in studio, and talk a little bit of drag racing. Mike Carpenter, Murder Tundra, what's happening, guys? Mike, we worked all week on our questions for the show. What do you got to get things started here?
Well, is there a drag race happening this week or weekend? Have you heard about this? The U.S. Nationals?
Almost ad nausea, right? Like, I'm glad to see everybody ranting and raving about it. It's fantastic, but it's a big reminder. I think more so than anything else, it's one of those things that really just reminds you that all roads lead to Indy. Like, you can win championships, you can stack up titles, you can do all these things, but Indy, it makes racers, it makes champions, it creates legends, and I'm genuinely excited about it. I fly out first thing Friday morning. I'm going to spend a couple of days in Claremont at Lucas Oil Raceway at Indianapolis, but man, I'm genuinely excited about it. And to your point, Mike, the whole world's talking about it.
Yeah, I hate I'm going to miss it this year, but it was definitely a special event. Last year, really, I think it was the event that it was the first of the post-COVID push that
first time made. Things felt kind of normal.
Yeah, they felt kind of normal. We had fans in the stands. It was an amazing weekend. I think the weather was awesome. We saw some really cool stuff. We saw Erica make her push toward her 4th world championship, getting her 2nd Indy win. So it's was it back-to-back Indy wins? Or
yeah, I think, right?
Oh no, wait, runner-up. I think she was runner-up to Alex.
The final to Alex.
Then,
the year before.
That's right. So yeah, I mean, that was very cool. And then we had the whole Eric Trump situation, which was unexpected, but really, especially for you and I, Wes, that was quite a unique experience. And I forgot let's see, is it the MAGA hat?
Yeah, the MAGA hat there in the background,
signed by Donald himself.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, who we did a video for, which still is mind-blowing that we ended up doing a video promoting drag racing kind of on the fly with our team that we had on the ground there at Indy, and we get it to the Trump team. One thing leads to another. Next thing we know, the big guy, as they call him, is posting it on social.
I think was that something that happened to us that we completely spaced the significance of as it was happening?
It's like an out of body deal. Like, you just forget, like you're on autopilot. You can't believe that this is happening. It's totally not what we intended to go there to do. But it just was awesome. Really worked out. We made some new friends, made some new contacts, and really kind of a once in a lifetime experience, probably.
Man, I really think so. It's an incredible It was for me personally, as somebody who, like, I don't want to dive into a bunch of politics. I just have respect for anybody that's like in office, serving our country, doing those type of things.
Yeah, you
and
have
for
to.
me, it was a huge moment just to be in the presence of somebody that was involved in that circle, the son of Donald Trump. It was a cool moment, man, and I'll never forget it. Seeing him climb behind the wheel of Jed Coughlin's Pro Stock car, Jed Coughlin Jr.'s Pro Stock car, and whack the throttle a couple of times.
I mean, it was cool no matter what.
It's a moment, man.
I mean, any president or his family, direct family, is there hanging out and whacking the throttle in a Pro Stock car, and we're doing drag racing videos for them. Regardless of where you stand, you have to admit that's pretty cool.
I was jealous. I was way jealous.
It was a cool moment, man. It really was. And I do want to remind everybody, please click like, click share, help us spread the word. It makes such a huge difference, man. In this technological age we live in, you have to do everything possible. So please share this. We're live right now on YouTube as well as on Facebook. Click like, click share, help us spread the message, man. We had an all-time high watermark for the West Buck Show last week, kind of a huge moment for all of us. We were blessed to have Stevie Fast Jackson in the house along with John Force, which was just a titanic lineup. We were hoping to have an ongoing conversation with Mike Murillo, big-time star of Street Outlaws, No Prep Kings. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties, and that kind of derailed that program. But
how about the handoff from Stevie to John? Do you think did John hit Stevie up after to see what his schedule looked like? See if he could get him in the car?
I think that was a legitimate drag racing moment. In my opinion, that was completely organic. Kudos to you guys, because apparently there was a conversation going on in the background about John's waiting. Should we just throw him into the mix?
We were waiting for you to give your seal of approval
about him being his hero. Let's just throw him on and surprise him.
Well, and I think Stevie got a little red in the neck. You know what I mean?
Blood
and
pressure
he was
went
like,
way up.
blood pressure went way up, and he went on and put on like basically a full pressure pitch. To become the test pilot, to jump in a car. And I'm hoping and pray, and this is a tough thing to talk about because I hate, and we're gonna dive into this a little bit with Alex Laughlin a little bit later, but I always hate to see door slammer drag racing, which I don't think it's any secret that I'm the biggest fan of door slammer drag racing. I always hate to see one of our best and brightest, somebody that's really been a huge part of the ascension of door slammer drag racing, someone like Stevie Fast, moving on to something else. I would hate to see door slammer drag racing lose Stevie, to Nitro Racing, to Top Fueler Funny Car. But I tell you what, if I take a step back and I really reflect on what would be the absolute best possible thing, in my opinion, that could happen to the sport of drag racing headed into the future, especially as some of these huge, big, polarizing personalities, the John Forces of the world, as their careers start to wind down, right? And as they start to really contemplate, how much longer am I going to do this? When do I ride off into the sunset? Do I want to go out on top? It's so important to have somebody locked and loaded to go in and consume that spotlight and kind of take the reins. And I personally feel I can look across the whole sport. I don't know that there is anybody better suited to carry this sport, to carry pro-level drag racing into the future, 22, 23, and so on, than Stevie Fast Jackson. And I hope that someday we can sit down and have a conversation and reminisce and BS about the fact that we kind of helped connect those two right here on this show via this platform that we're so proud of. And can you imagine if that day actually happened, looking back on that clip 5-10 years from now? I mean, just imagine.
John said the stars are coming, or, to some effect. He knows that is something that's going to take place sooner or later. So it's a possibility. We're going to need stuff like that. If Nitro Racing is going to survive in the format that it has and is carried by these superstars, like a John Force, I mean, someone like Stevie is waiting in the wings. When Stevie first went to NHRA, there was a ton of talk about him doing some testing, I believe, in a DSR car, or his relationship with DSR, to potentially have at least some kind of part-time ride there. I haven't heard much about that.
I think a lot of that was rooted in his relationship with Phil Schuler, who at the time was crewing. I believe when Stevie made his big push into NHRA almost 3 years ago now, Phil Schuler was still, I believe, co-crew chief on the Fram car, I believe, alongside Todd Okahara, or he maybe had already transferred over to the U.S. Army car. But nonetheless, he still had a huge presence over at Don Schumacher Racing. And there was some belief, being that Stevie had spent several years driving Phil Schuler's personal car, the beloved Shadow, the original version, and then Shadow 2.0 after a crazy crash in Valdosta several years back. But there was some hubbub, some rumors that could potentially happen. Obviously, it has not. But I do think that if there was a way that something like that could happen, even if it was Stevie getting his feet wet, serving as a test pilot a little bit for John Force Racing, there is some synergy there. Maybe they don't know it. Maybe it hasn't been explored yet. But if I'm NHRA or if I'm anybody that's a string puller of any sort in our sport right now, I'm working to try to make something like that happen. I'm not saying we don't have stars. We're going to be joined by a couple of them here in a few minutes. Alex Laughlin, Matt Hagan, two, I believe, absolutely infinitely marketable young men that are competing at an extremely high level in drag racing. But you got to admit, Stevie Fast Jackson, it's just different. It hits different. He's got a following that is, I believe, largely unrivaled in door slammer drag racing.
It kind of reminds me of Scotty Cannon. Scotty was the standout pro mod guy. He had the big personality, the crazy hair. He was kind of a Stevie in the 90s, Stevie. Right? Yeah. And then he got picked up. Met Jim Gennard, got picked up in the Oakley deal, and went to Funny Car. So he kind of reminds me of that. I think we even discussed or even had some stories correlating those two, but it kind of reminds me.
I've never thought about it, but that's an absolutely perfect example. Or the way that Scotty Cannon came up through the door slammer ranks really built this hardcore fan following. People that I've had stories told to me about fans being willing to fight to the death on behalf of Scotty Cannon.
Well, he didn't need your help.
He'd have happily done it himself, I'm sure. But I remember him or maybe Shannon Jenkins telling me a story about on the heels of a big IHRA Pro Mod rule revision that people were up in arms and Scotty was up in arms. They'd made a rule change, I think putting weight or trying to slow down the supercharged Hemi cars to make the nitrous cars more competitive. And there was this big kind of upheaval in the pits. And fans were willing to fight on behalf of the driver they supported, right? There was the Scotty Cannon fans that were willing to fight the Shannon Jenkins fans over this rule, blower versus nitrous, not only on the drag strip, but in the freaking pits. Yeah. And I think that Stevie has something like that as well.
For sure.
I mean, we saw it on display when he dived into this whole no prep controversy and started going back and forth with Justin Swanstrom, calling them the Sesame Street Outlaws and doing all these things. His fans immediately followed in and defended him and were there to support him and ride with him. But he was met with some pretty significant resistance from a world of no prep fans. But it's a very similar tale, man.
It's passion, man. It's all about passion.
More people or more, I guess, teams in the sport that would go down and handpick these guys. It's too bad that we didn't have more money in it to the point where if look how many races Stevie Fast has won and what all he's won them in. I mean, this kid has drove everything, right? Has a big following, like you said. He's done everything right. So you'd hope that someday we'll get to a point where these big teams will go down and go, hey, we're going to bring this kid up. Kind of like, excuse me, in NASCAR, how they do with smaller teams and stuff. They go down, they find their guy and bring him up. And
I think the difference is, though, if you ask these guys, like Stevie's at the pinnacle. These guys are so separated by their class, and they identify so heavily with.
That's true.
No, hell, I'm a pro stock racer. No, I'm a pro mod racer. No, I'm a radio guy. They don't want to go funny car racing.
Yeah, you're right.
Man, that deal's done. I'm right here. I'm at the pinnacle. So it's less of more of like a farm league type thing to where you're continually moving up the ladder. And I think if you ask Stevie right now, probably his opinion has changed. I know we should dive right into our next topic about pro mod car count at Indy, but for the last couple of years, you probably asked Stevie, are you at the pinnacle? Do you want to do funny car? And he would say, no, man, I'm good right here. I'm at the top.
We heard it from Dallas Glenn. I think that was something that our audience, I think, slept on. I slept on a little bit, and it's something that we probably should have talked about more. But right here on the show, Dallas told us 2 or 3 weeks ago that his aspirations, he's there. He's at the top of the mountain in his mind. He's racing NHRA Pro Stock. I think about people like Erica Enders, Jed Coughlin Jr., Greg Anderson. I mean, these guys are iconic. They're legends. They're heroes. They're
different.
It's a different thing.
They're at the pinnacle of door car racing. They don't want to get in that plate car or top fuel dragster for the most part. Not because they couldn't do it or they're any other reason. It's just that they see drag racing as a door slammer sport, which I can totally agree with. But
I can totally.
So what do you think about the car count going into Indy we talked about the car count being down at Brainerd last weekend or a couple weekends ago. And we talked about them being, or NHRA, being somewhat fortunate, in our opinion, that Indy is next on the schedule, in that it can kind of wash away the bad taste from Brainerd, which was a fantastic event, but lacked the car count. And at Indy, everyone, even if it's just the only race they run all year, they're coming to Indy. What do you think we're in store for this weekend?
There's a couple of things that come to mind for me, Mike, when I think about the car count at Indy. I was so glad to see it up over 18, I believe is what you said, especially with back-to-back really poor showings in Denver and Brainerd, respectively. But for me, it's a double-edged sword. There's a part of me that's obviously excited, and Pro Mod, Fast Door Slammer drag racing is absolutely my cup of tea, so I can't wait. One of my fondest memories of the U.S. Nationals is just being in the staging lanes amongst all those Pro Mod cars, because I still remember when these cars and these drivers were kind of treated as, I don't mean to be disrespectful or whatever, but treated as like a second tier category. They weren't really accepted into the fold of pro level drag racing the way that I feel they deserve to be. And I remember having experienced watching that kind of unfold and develop and being there like on a Saturday morning when they've got one more shot to get in. It's such a unique experience to have the final qualifying session come on Saturday morning, not the greatest track conditions, under the bright sun. It's a very, very unique situation, man. But as excited as I am to see some of the names on that list, it was great to see Jim Whiteley on there. He's really been making a push towards the Midwest Drag Racing Series, Keith Haney's program. That's a fantastic outlaw 8th Mile Pro Mod series. He's way up there in the points, I think, in the top 2 or 3, competing in that event, that event series all year long. But it's great to see him, especially for what he's done for the NHRA Pro Mod series. I mean, let's remember, it may be the E3 Sparkplugs NHRA Pro Mod Drag Racing Series right now, presented by J&A Service, but for many, many moons prior to that, it was the J&A Service NHRA Pro Mod Drag Racing Series. There's no telling how much time and money that Jim and Annie Whiteley, I should say, have poured in to Pro Modified Drag Racing. So to see his name on that Pro Mod entry list, I think is a big deal. Jason Scruggs, another one. I think it's going to be a fantastic drag race. I'm anxious to see a little bit of the aftermath of the rule change. I think we started to see things head in the right direction as far as the parity is concerned amongst these different combinations. We've got a slew of them in there right now. I mean, we've got a couple of different cubic inch nitrous combinations, a roots blown deal, Pro Charger deal, and of course the twin turbo charge combination, which has all but gone the way of the dodo here in 2021. But still, to see those cars getting a little closer together, the performance much more representative of the parity that we saw in the last few years prior to the inclusion of the the Pro Charger combo. I'm excited about it. Yeah, I will say I'm a little concerned that this is that moment we talked about a few weeks ago where car count goes back up to where we want it, and all of a sudden we forget that there are still some issues. I think the NHRA Pro Mod series, I don't mean to pick it apart at all, but I would love to see these guys racing for more money. I'd love to see these guys on Fox, as part of the television broadcast. I do think there's more for Pro Mod. They deserve more, in my opinion, but I am super, super happy to see it trending in the right direction, brother.
Well, I agree. And I think they needed to make a rule change, and I'm glad they did, even if it temporarily hurts the car count, or if it's kind of like, there's nothing that we can do to totally fix this situation for the rest of this year. Let's make this change. Let's get these guys some laps under their belt with these rules, and let's focus on 2022 and righting the ship for next year.
I think that's what they've done, right?
I really hope that they're turning their attention to putting their minds together this off season and really getting this right for next year. Because I think next year is make or break for this class. If this continues, this is irrecoverable territory. I think that they've got to really get it right over the off season, go into it with a rule set that they're comfortable with, and that they don't feel like, barring any unforeseen circumstances, they're going to have to change and let it ride, and assure their racers that that's their thinking, and get these guys confident about getting on these entry lists.
I'm curious, Mike, I want to throw this out there. What's Stevie Jackson, I believe, is leading the NHRA Pro Mod points right now. I should have caught these notes. I was too busy making sure that I knew where Alex Laughlin and Matt Hagan were in the realm of the NHRA point standings. But Stevie, I believe, is leading the point standings. What is this championship season? Like, what does this mean here in 2021, right? Because I wonder, is there going to be an asterisk
I don't think
beside
so.
this year? I mean, because
No.
I hate it for the racers, because I know these guys want to race against the baddest dudes alive. They want Stevie Jackson there. They want Ricky Smith there. They want Mike Castellana there. They want Khaled Belushi. They want Justin Bond. They want the baddest dudes alive, Jose Gonzalez, right? But when you win a couple of these deals and you have some success and you don't have those big fields that we're used to, do you think it diminishes it at all, Mike?
I don't think so. Maybe in the short term, but in the end, all we remember is who won and who won the championship. I mean, there's a lot of these races like the 60s and 70s that these legends won where maybe theirs weren't full fields. Maybe we don't know all the details of that. It's fresh in our memory right now, but as time goes on, I don't think we put an asterisk on anything from last year. We're certainly not doing it this year. These guys are out there racing, and I think that takes away from them too much. I mean, we all came into 2021 understanding that this was going to be more of a complete season than last year. So I think just what would be your reasoning for doing that besides, oh, we made some rule changes, because right. That's always happened. They're talking about adding another combination next year. That's where I just believe anytime that this has happened, it happened in IHRA as well. You got to get these rules right, and maybe you make one change in the middle of the season. But to change the rules multiple times and have these new combinations coming in, you don't even have the Pro Chargers under control, and now you're talking about adding.
I think that's. I mean, I got to tell you, I don't mean to send us down the rabbit hole of talking about something else, but I am going to tell you that I am not in support of this. This is something that's getting a lot of traction right now. I'm getting a lot of texts about it, a lot of calls about it, that the potential inclusion of screw blowers in 2022. I understand to some extent the idea or the notion that there's some cars out there that might show up, but we're not. I think the harsh reality, the real truth is we are not going to gain, I believe, a single touring car by adding that combination. What we will do, however, is make a whole bunch of people that already have an established program convert to that, because how
many screw blown cars that are out there. The last time I can remember screw blown cars running quarter mile was a lot of the West Coast stuff, and you had those guys, they're running like 260,
or more, 270,
just falling off
right?
the trailer. 270. Didn't Frankie go?
Oh yeah, I think Mike Maggio out on the West Coast has been 270 plus. Frankie Taylor's been 270. I mean,
and again, I trust me, I'm not a supercharger expert whatsoever, but how are you going to rein that combination in? Is it going to have to weigh 3,000 pounds?
I don't know what they're going to do.
No overdrive. I mean, how do you run those cars to compete with these other combinations? Because we keep taking these combinations that have gobs of horsepower and having to knock the wind completely out of them. That's the issue more times than not. And again, maybe the issue with screw superchargers would be a mechanical limitation and not an electronic or otherwise limitation.
It's a step in the right direction, but I mean, it's
still they're just making too much power.
I've had a handful of guys tell me
into that arena,
like, oh man, there's a guy, there's a couple of guys in the Midwest that would come run a handful of races, and I love that, and that's absolutely what we're after. But I just really don't think we're going to gain any touring cars. I think the best possible situation for the NHRA Pro Mod Series is to arrive at a rule set that's going to, and I think leave it where it is. I do not think including another combination is a step in the right direction. I don't mean to offend anybody that disagrees with that mindset, but
I think it'd be cool. And I think I love seeing. I wish there were 10 combinations.
Same.
I think that's what makes Pro Mod badass, is just all the.
But it's so hard to do,
it's
right?
impossible to police, and especially on quarter mile.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to do, in my opinion. And I think that the perfect scenario would be to allow the rules to kind of settle. I think we're close. Get to a point where we're going to have maybe 16 to 20 quote unquote touring pros. Get Jim Whiteley back involved. Get Jason Scruggs going to a majority of the races. Get Eric Latino back in the fold. There's Mike Castellana back in the fold. There's a lot of guys that we haven't seen recently. Mm-hmm. Sidney Frigo comes to mind. Always a player, has won races, always running at the front. Get some of these guys back in the mix. Find out what's preventing them from participating full time, and then solve those problems, obviously, but go into every event with like a field of 16, 18, 20 best case scenario, what I would call touring pros, and then have the rules. And I think this is probably something that would happen by way of these safety rules that Stevie Jackson referenced last year, the enclosed drive shaft tunnel, or the enclosed tunnel from firewall to the drive shaft enclosure. Maybe consider, I don't ever want to loosen safety rules. Stevie mentioned like a 2-race waiver, something like that, where if you wanted to get your feet wet in the NHRA, you didn't have to go spend $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 changing your car in order to do so. I totally understand the safety aspect of it, but I also know the nature of racers. And that's a very tough sell for a multitude of these guys.
Brian McCaddy's in the YouTube comments says, use the Ricky Smith thought process, bring them back in a tenth slow and let them work their way up. And I agree with that. But to your point, Wes, that's expensive. So you're going to convince these racers to build a combination that is blatantly handicapped and to work at it as they go. There's no patience for that. There's no budget for that. That's kind of what happened with turbos. But I don't know. Maybe it was just a different era or a different time, but those guys kind of accepted that challenge and worked on it. I mean, there was a long time where turbos were, laughed at, or just like, what are you doing with that? Go get you a nitrous car or a blown car and let's get out here. But those guys stuck with it. And with Pro Chargers, Brian McCaddy also said they just kind of threw them in, hoping to have that same kind of result. And they were way ahead of the game. So technology and just the era that we're in, and just
these things happen fast, man.
It's
and
expensive to run this deal. You can't just ask someone to build a combination and hope that it will eventually be competitive. There's
my
just
take
no one's
on
going
it.
to sign up for that.
Can you imagine a world where we had all the aforementioned superstars of the NHRA Pro Mod Drag Racing Series, right? Going to all these events, but when the NHRA E3, the E3 Spark Plugs NHRA Drag Racing Series rolls into maybe St. Louis to Gateway International Raceway, Worldwide Technology Raceway, there across the Mississippi River from the Arch in downtown St. Louis, how cool would it be to see some of the stars of the Midwest Drag Racing Series show up, right? Keith Haney's car, legal to run NHRA minus all those safety rules. Todd Martin, maybe he's got a roots blower program, or there's a handful of Pro Charger cars. Rob Gallegos, I think I said his last name close to correct, but there's a handful of those guys that I think when it made sense regionally would turn up. Right. And then you go out to the East Coast for the 4-wide nationals at ZMAX Dragway. You get maybe Jay Cox, Tommy Franklin, Jason Harris to show up because their cars are legal. Right.
Well,
minus those safety rules.
That
and
is probably the where it took a turn for the worse, is that now that just singles out those NHRA cars to where they've got all that extra weight and the safety rules, and these other cars don't have to have it. And those guys are not putting those on. And maybe they see it as just not being necessary as well. Maybe a knee-jerk reaction.
Well, I don't think they're going to make they're not going to put hang a bunch of weight on their car or make a bunch of changes to their car that's going to put them at a disadvantage where they race primarily.
Yeah.
Is the
and
main
I think
thing.
The era of hoping to pick guys from local, we talked about this last week. There's so many local series that these guys are excited about running and build their cars for. They're not also hoping to maybe jump into an NHRA race and go out there and probably, get their ass handed to them because they're just, unprepared or don't have the same. I mean, you used to see that, but now there's just too many different series to where I don't think it's happening anymore. And the NHRA Pro Mod Series is maybe it's not the draw that it was, when it used to kind of be the only game in town.
It's an interesting discussion to have, man, and I think that we will probably circle back around to this because this is a fun one to talk about. I think it's near and dear both of our hearts. It's pro modified drag racing.
Yeah, sorry, I get fired up.
Same, dude. So do I, dude. I mean, it's been central to what we do at Drag Illustrated for 15 years. I got two things I want to touch on real quick. I'm going to JT take me to a solo panel here real quick. It would be an absolute tragedy for me not to make mention of the brand new issue of Drag Illustrated. JT, I'm going to click the button here. The brand new issue of Drag Illustrated magazine that just dropped on dragillustrated.com. Check it out. Galen Rollison, Britt Cummings on the cover of our special sportsman issue. This is something that we do every year to celebrate the weekend warriors, the grassroots racers, the people that keep our sport headed in the right direction. So proud of this issue. Incredible cover story with Britt and Galen talking about their guaranteed $1 million drag race and just all things sportsman racing. We really wanted to use these two, who I believe are doing fantastic things for sportsman level drag racing, big money bracket racing. They do all sorts of cool stuff. Their team events, Everything these guys do, I'm a big fan of, but I thought that they would be a fantastic group of people, a fantastic duo to use to take the temperature of sportsman drag racing. This has been something that I get more emails about maybe than anything else. And that's that how many $1 million drag races can we have? SFGs did one. There's the original $1 million drag race, of course. We also have Galen and Britt's Guaranteed Million. How many of these major big money bracket racing events can our sport support, and what's it do to every other event? I mean, it seems like every time we turn our head, there's another 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 100,000 to win bracket race. Just this past weekend, the inaugural Jeg Spring Fling took off. I think they paid 25,000 one day, 100,000 one day. I mean, it's incredible the amount of money that's changing hands at these big money bracket races, and it's a fascinating story how this has all come to be. So remember, log on to dragillustrated.com. You can check out the brand new issue of the magazine for free. We are big fans of giving our best content away. It's something that's near and dear our heart. It serves our mission to grow and build the sport of drag racing. Trust me, we have that desire to put it behind a paywall like the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, but we know that the way we can do the most for the sport of drag racing is put this content, what I believe to be the best storytellers in the drag racing world. They operate here at Drag Illustrated, and I think we can best serve our mission by giving this stuff away for free. So you can check out the entire issue on dragillustrated.com. You can also subscribe, and you will get the magazine emailed to you every month. So please check it out. Really proud of it. Tons of great photography in there. Really an all-round epic issue of the magazine. And I suppose without further ado, and guys, I have to say that I'm genuinely excited about this. I've been saying for years that our next guest, in my opinion, is perhaps the most marketable young star that our sport has to offer. He's great on camera. He's personable, charismatic. He's got a passion for drag racing that is abundantly clear. He's competed at the highest levels in a wide variety of drag racing disciplines and seemingly shocked the world in 2021 by announcing his move into Top Fuel competition. Friends, give it up, and I want a round of applause for Murder Tundra and Mike Carpenter here. Give it up for Alex Laughlin. Come on, guys. Woo, cheer, everybody.
What's cracking?
Sweet, Mike.
I'm actually a top fan, right, Alex?
Yeah, you got your top fan badge.
Yeah, I do have a top fan
I've got
badge.
a top fan badge.
Yeah,
dude, if you literally
Appreciate it.
I think if you open your freaking Facebook app, I get a notification.
Yeah,
perfect.
Seriously.
Hopefully everybody does. Yeah, check that out.
Yeah,
Murder T. Yeah, buddy.
I'm going to real quick, and I'm not going to derail this interview, so bear with me because I typically do. But I'm going to say this real quick. There's a funny story behind that ring. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex is a dear friend of mine, somebody I consider a real homie away from all this. Like if we all quit drag racing tomorrow, Alex and I believe, would still be friends. And after he won, lights out, he was on the cover of Drag Illustrated magazine. We're holding up the money phone, the big stack of cash with Donald Long. Great moment. He had a championship rings were created to commemorate that moment. Alex, being the kind of guy he is, gifted me one. Big moment for me. I opened the box, and it's got the blue screw on there, representative of Alex's beloved C6 Corvette with the screw blower up top. Really cool moment for me. Alex, I don't know if you know this. About 3 months after that, our Drag Illustrated offices got broken into, and all of my championship rings got stolen that had been gifted to me from various teams and team owners. And they were some of my prized possessions. And that
it was me. I was trying to break in to get that ring.
It did, dude. They kicked the door off the hinges, robbed us blind. They did find about $750,000 worth of fake money that I had bought for the winner's circle at the World Door Slammer Nationals. And we have them on camera finding this money and like celebrating. They're like, oh my gosh, this guy keeps money in plastic tins or in plastic tubs. It was hilarious. And they run out the door with all that fake cash and my championship rings.
They stole everything, and then they found the money, and then boom, they stopped. They didn't steal anything else in the whole office.
There was no need
hilarious.
So it's like a security
and then
to have that fake money. Just
every little town around our town, and all the convenience stores and McDonald's. I mean, everybody was getting these hundreds, man. The cops, they couldn't even keep up with it.
I think they were genuinely mad at me, to be honest.
And this cat walks in with this one day, and like, hey man, I found this, just laying the weeds out here. Like, well, I ain't paying you for it. Give it to me, So.
Yeah, sure.
But JT, long story, Murder Tundra got it back for us. So I'm glad he showed that off. Alex, I know we have limited time with you. You're headed for Indy. You've got big plans this weekend. Kind of want to dive into our first question. As someone who's done a whole lot of drag racing, Alex, with a considerable amount of success. You've won in pro stock at Indy. You've, like I just said, you've won Radial versus the World in Valdosta. You won our own World Door Slammer Nationals behind the wheel of the Caruso family Camaro a couple of years ago, and now you're taking on Top Fuel. Can you do us a little compare and contrast? Like, start with the car itself. You told me privately that you maybe hadn't given these cars or their drivers the respect or the credit they deserve. And I guess I just want to know how so.
Yeah, I've actually always said that. First off, can you hear me well?
Very well.
Okay. All right. Perfect. First off, I have always said, that there can't be much to driving a Top Fuel car because you literally just hit the gas and hang on, burp, and it's over. While that 100% is true as far as how long it lasts, I was completely wrong about what it even feels like to your body. I've drag raced literally everything except a bike and a boat, I think. And the Top Fuel car doesn't compare to anything else, especially the pro stock guys. They do always dog on it. And they say that a pro stock car is the hardest car to drive. I don't think that's true after doing both or a lot of everything or a little bit of everything. I think that it's easier to drive a pro stock car. It's harder to drive a pro stock car perfectly. That's the hardest part. I think that probably anybody can get out of a Top Fuel car that because they're going so fast already that they're able to slow everything down in their mind and process it much quicker. So since everything's happening so much slower in a pro stock car, I feel like most people would be able to hop in and make a lap. But doing it perfectly, I do feel is a long shot. So that's the hardest part. But as far as the Top Fuel car, man, just like the acceleration, the G-forces, it's like nothing I've ever experienced before. And that's what was the biggest shock. I spent a full season in Alcohol Dragster. It's the exact same car, same chassis, same process entirely, but it's just not as fast. And so I assumed going from an Alcohol Dragster into a Top Fuel car would be pretty similar. I didn't have to learn how to drive the Top Fuel car because it is the same process, but I did have to learn what is happening to my body and what am I experiencing, because it's just insane. Period.
Does that speak to the fact that drag racers, especially in our nitro categories, are way more athletes than maybe they're given credit for? Because I know almost every time there's ESPN does some sort of an award ceremony, or there's some major mainstream sports company or media outlet starts talking about athletes and whatnot, drivers are typically completely excluded from those conversations. And I'm just curious. I mean, we see it all the time. Someone climbs out of one of those cars huffing and puffing, and even the best, whether it's Steve Torrance or Matt Hagan, guys that are at the absolute top peak of their game, or as well as relatively fresh faces. Paul Lee, someone that we've seen the last few years making full pulls in Nitro Funny Car, he gets out of the car, and I mean, it's short for breath. Matt Hagan gets out of the car huffing and puffing, man. Do you think that makes a great argument, what you just said, that the guys and gals that drive these cars are absolutely athletes?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And while you are literally just going down the track for a matter of seconds, it is hot. You are wearing a ton of heavy equipment, safety gear and whatnot. And I personally am seatbelted into this thing so tight that I can't even take a full breath. As far as trying to take a deep breath before you stage or something, that's out. I mean, my spine is literally like buckled in half because I'm pulled down so tight in that thing. And actually in Topeka, Kansas, where we raced last, or where I last raced, one of my interviews at the top end was talking about how I grew up watching John Force. He gets out of the car, he's huffing and puffing. And I said, you know what, dude, I get it, because I mean, I don't even know if I breathe going down the racetrack, because it is the most intense thing I've ever done in my life. And so pulling off the track, you're definitely starting to think your adrenaline's still pumping, just like, what did I just experience? And it's
one of the things that I don't think people know that I find very interesting. And I don't, this wasn't exactly my planned second question, but I want to throw this out there. The staging process. I think a lot of people believe that driving a Top Fuel car is similar to anything with a clutch with a clutch, where they're running that pedal, easing it in and out or whatever. I think very few people realize that a Top Fuel car or a Nitro Funny car has so much static clutch pressure that the clutch is all the way out when you light that bottom bulb, you're just holding it against the idle with the brake. I don't think people fully understand that. Could you take us through briefly, just like from backing up from the burnout and starting to pull forward, what your hands and legs are doing, what your hands and feet are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So once you've done the burnout and backed all the way up, you put it back in forward and you start creeping up. They get you close to the beams, right? They're holding you there. They look over, the other guy or the car in the other lane is ready to go. You get the thumbs up. At that point, I go ahead and start easing out on the clutch while I'm dragging the brake. I light my top bulb, clutch back in. As soon as they light their top bulb, or vice versa, that's when you let the clutch out completely. And at that point, you are just holding it by the brake handle. What I do is I actually let the clutch out, and there's a foot pad between the two pedals, the gas pedal and the clutch pedal. And I hold my foot right there on that foot pad, and you don't ever touch the clutch again all the way through the shutdown. From that point on, once you step off the clutch pedal, you're just sitting there holding it by the brake. And as soon as the trigger drops, you stab the gas. It rips the brake handle right out of your hand, and away you go. Hang on.
I think it's a pretty incredible thing that is kind of just those little nuances I don't know are largely understood, right? People just, I think they think about pulling up to a stoplight, right? In their 4-cylinder Jeep or what have you, and easing forward, right? Because the car in front of them rolled forward or whatever. And you think about doing that with, I mean, we've seen it many times going back to the athlete conversation, that the leg strength that it takes to finesse a clutch pedal with that much static clutch pressure, as well as manhandling the car in the shutdown. We've seen a lot of drivers, especially new drivers, really struggle with these cars on the big end as you head in to get the laundry out and head into the shutdown. Can you take us through that a little bit? Just keeping the car in your lane, because that seems to be where most people have trouble, is way down there at the big end. The car starts to want to move around.
That's 100% the case, and it's so easy to get behind the car, because the car, and it's not necessarily physically behind the car, but your brain is 100 feet or 200 feet behind you. It is accelerating and moving at such a fast rate of speed that once it starts drifting to the right or the left, whichever way you're trying to counter steer it, it's already gone way further than what you're imagining. In comparison to a door car, the hardest part about the run in a door car is the early side of the track. That's the part that when you let the clutch out or let off the trans brake, you might go cross-eyed or lose your marbles there for just a second. But the Top Fuel car, it's already leaving much, much harder, typically a 1/10 of a second faster or quicker than a door car already. And it pulls harder and harder and harder the entire way. So the G meter is going up as the car goes down the racetrack, where a door car, it hits the high G's early and it starts falling as you go down towards the finish line. And so that's the reason that it does get so intense further down the racetrack.
I think it's a really interesting thing that just, I mean, to your point, honestly, that I don't know that these men and women, the Alexis DeJorias, I think, especially the Leah Pruitts, especially the Brittany Forces and all these young women that manage to go out there and fight these machines down the track. I mean, it's inarguably controlled chaos, and I just have a lot of respect for them. And I get surprised that I don't see more people like yourself that are clearly athletic. J.R. Todd, clearly athletic. Matt Hagan, clearly athletic. And it makes me proud, because I think those are the type of people that I want to represent our sport in the mainstream, in the public eye. So it's a really, really cool thing. And I appreciate the details. Kind of switching gears here. And I think we're going to bring the homie in, Mike Carpenter. Is that right? Mike wants to be a part of the door slammer question. So I think I'm going to speak for both of us here. As dyed-in-the-wool door slammer guys, I have to ask, is this chapter of your career, the Pro Stock Pro Mod chapter of your career, or Radio Verse the World, or maybe even No Prep, or like the Big Tire Outlaw stuff you did at the Streetcar Super Nationals Grudge event down here in Dallas a few months ago, is that something that you feel is behind you, man? And I guess I'm going to screw up here a little bit, but this might be a good time to interject. I got to be honest, man. I heard a little rumor that you were going to drive for Richie Stevens this weekend in Pro Stock, but the NHRA put the kibosh on that deal and didn't let it happen. So I guess maybe I answered my own question, or maybe you can elaborate.
Perfect segue there. I would say that the door car stuff at this point, for the most part, is probably behind me. I do absolutely love this Top Fuel stuff more than anything than I ever imagined. And it is what I am pursuing. Obviously, as far as funding goes, it does require a decent amount more. And so I'm really just putting all of my eggs in that basket. I was asked by Richie if I'd be interested in driving his car at the U.S. Nationals this weekend in Pro Stock, because he lives in New Orleans and they were affected by the hurricane. I told him, I do hate the circumstances of what presented the opportunity, but I said I would absolutely love to drive the car for him. I've probably ran as many races in two cars in two categories as I have in a single category. And so I've done it a ton. And I reached out to NHRA, and they do have an old dinosaur rule in the rule book that says you can't run two pro categories. I could run Top Fuel and Pro Mod, but I can't run Top Fuel and Pro Stock. I thought that was a huge bummer. But, all you can assume is that there's a reason from way back in the day. I don't know. There's got to be more to it than what we can see. That's just what you have to assume, right?
I guess I don't totally. And Mike, do you have like some insight? Because for one thing, I want to say is that they have let the Top Fuel Pro Mod thing happen, because if you remember, Khaled Belushi, did that. I believe Leah may have done that a little bit. I think when she was driving the R2B2 Top Fuel or the Fun Pro Mod, I'm not totally sure, but it has happened. But there's two parts of this. Yet another example of the Pro Mod division not getting treated with the respect, in my opinion, my belief, that they deserve. Mike, do you know something about this that maybe I don't?
I really don't. And I mean, it's probably pretty rare for it to happen at the same race. You might see guys that would do this, alternate or go back and forth from Top Fuel to Pro Mod or something like that, but to happen at the same race, I think is
what is the concern, Alex? Did they explain what the issue is necessarily?
No, I didn't get any explanation other than, it's been asked before, and if they made an exception this one time, that it would open up Pandora's box for future issues. And that's what I'm saying. There must be more to it.
What that is, or what the issues are. Is it a scheduling thing? Is it a competitive thing where someone could compete, like a Steve Torrance or somebody could compete in all three classes and they don't want that? I mean, I
wonder if it has something to do with like timing. We've experienced that ourselves, right? Like
that's what I mean.
We've experienced that ourselves. We had a situation at the World Door Slammer Nationals earlier this year, the CTEC World Door Slammer Nationals presented by Jegs in Orlando. An interesting situation where Erica Enders was racing Pro Stock, obviously competing in our headline category, but also in Comp Eliminator. And it was I admit that it was a bit of a dance, right? Because you did find yourself in a situation where, like, okay, we got to hold things up because we need to get Erica back up here to get her ready for comp, and we can't run those cars. Or I can see how it causes a problem, but I guess my question right now, in the grand scheme of things, you've got someone like Alex Laughlin, who has a strong fan following, is really on the come up, right? Made this big move into Top Fuel, has sponsorship support, has companies like Hot Wheels following his movements and working with him frequently. It seems like it would be worth whatever is required to make this big moment possible, because it would be the talk of town.
Yeah, I think it would be a cool deal. Unfortunately, they shot it down. But you look back to just a few years ago, you had to be 18 years old to be able to compete in a pro category. That was another old dinosaur rule, and they ended up changing that for Tanner Gray. But I guess at the end of the day, I don't have the money to buy the rules.
Oh, yeah, it usually comes to that, right? But
I mean, unfortunately, I do think that sometimes those things are at play, whether we like it or not. I mean, it's the way of the world, especially here in 2021, man. A checkbook can change things. I do find it interesting, especially with some of the car count issues that the NHRA has had in 2022, or excuse me, in 2021. It feels like anything we could do to get another rig in the pits, because I look at it from so many different angles. Like when I put my promoter hat on, unfortunately, I can't help but think about another tractor trailer in the pits, right? Somebody to get an autograph or to walk by and take pictures, things like that. I mean, it really adds to the event in a lot of different ways, more so than just on the racetrack. Interesting thing. Do you look back? I mean, you've had some really, really, I'm sure, fond memories of Door Slammer drag racing. It's winning all these big races, being a part of all the big events down at Donald Long's Productions in South Georgia Motorsports Park. What of that world do you think that you will miss the most, Alex?
Man, I will say the door cars had my heart for the longest time, and I will always love them, and never regret the time that I spent in them. They are difficult to drive. They're a blast to drive. It is a completely different feeling. So I can't quite say that I just absolutely love the Top Fuel stuff so much more, because it is still very different. If I did have the opportunity to hop back in a pro mod or something here in the future, I would be happy to. Absolutely.
Kind of on the same line, we talked about Stevie earlier, and we talked about it being so rare. Really, Scotty Cannon being the prime example of door slammer guys going to the fuel ranks. Why do you think that is so rare, that we don't see more of this crossover? So many people wanting to try something new or do it. Like in your case, we talk about your marketing partners and your sponsors. You're such a savvy marketer that you're doing it to bring more exposure to those companies. Why don't we see this happen more often? And why is it so segregated?
I think there's probably a couple of reasons. One being because everybody assumes that the nitro stuff is such a bigger deal to fund. It costs twice as much, right? I will say that isn't completely the case, because I'm doing this for not a whole lot more than what it was costing to run Pro Stock and Pro Mod. But then secondly, all of the door car guys are just huge fans of door cars.
Right.
And when you're around all of those people, they're the ones that are always like, oh, nitro sucks, and bashing it. And so I think that some people just don't ever look at considering the switch, just because they're really just tied and anchored down. I hate to say in like a cultish way, but I don't know. I probably never would have tried it, to be honest, other than the reason that all of this came together and just happened.
And Scott Palmer, the guy that kind of showed you the door to the Top Fuel, he's kind of a pro mod Top Fuel crossover guy as well. So it's very interesting to think about, really.
From a business standpoint, Alex, I'm curious, and we always love talking about the business of racing here on the West Buck Show. I'm curious, like, we've talked about all your various marketing partners. I mean, I believe right now, and there's a lot of brands you represent. I'm curious how companies like Hagan, Hot Wheels, Powerbuilt, Tyga, how have they reacted to this ascension to Top Fuel racing? Because I know you've told me before that many of these brands you represent don't necessarily care. They're not overtly concerned with what type of racing that you're doing. They see you as an ambassador for them. And as long as you're racing, as long as you're competing at a high level, they don't totally care where you go race. But I can't imagine racing Top Fuel and all this additional television exposure and all this additional media. I can't imagine it's not being well received.
It doesn't hurt anything, for sure. I will say that. And it started out just on paper. My contracts have said Pro Stock and or Pro Mod. And the only pushback I got was from one sponsor, is because on paper, and you have to understand, working with some of these huge corporate companies, when it gets down to legal and the paperwork, it just has to be what it says that it is. And whenever I did make the switch going into Denver, they did make an exception. But they kind of started the weekend out with like, we're not really going to post much about this Top Fuel car because it isn't what it's supposed to be. And by the end of the weekend, they were posting it all over their own social media, and they loved it. It's been huge. And just days after, I got the amendment for the contract that has got plus Top Fuel.
That's hilarious, man. I'm not really surprised at all. And I was always proud, and I loved that story you told me about. At the time, you were working with a really, really big, like Fortune 500, very, very impactful company. This was right before COVID, that I thought, oh my gosh, if this happens, it's going to be so big for drag racing. But I was so proud of you and of the situation where they didn't really care what kind of car you drove. They looked at you as an ambassador for their brand, and they saw value in the motorsports and drag racing market, which was, I think, a feather in the cap of drag racing. But I can't imagine that it hurts, as you said, to be participating at the highest level of our sport. There's a couple of things that I want to touch on just briefly before we cut you loose, man. You have really performed well. I know you're hard on yourself, and you put a bunch of pressure on yourself to perform at a high level. And, cutting a light in these cars is a challenge for anybody. We see the best in the business go 90 or 100 at times. You have demonstrated, though, the performance to be in the thick of things. How proud of you, or excuse me, how proud are you of Scott Palmer Racing, Scott himself, that whole crew, an incredible group of guys, because they're really giving you a race car that you can go rounds in.
Yeah, they are, and they're awesome people. Just to add on top of it, every single person there, every crew member, anybody that's under the SPR tent there, they're just so happy to be there. Nobody complains about anything. It's all positivity, and the vibe is so good that a lot of success, that's what it comes to. The teams that you look around, and not saying specifically Top Fuel or Nitro in general, but any team, the people that are out there that even do have the horsepower, that do run good, they don't all love each other. They don't get along. They aren't all super happy to be there. And with that bitterness really pours over into performance. I owe Scott everything from allowing me the opportunity to license in his car, and for him to get out of his own car in Denver and let me run it, to the direction that we're heading now. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's a place that I'm at now that I never thought was achievable. It's not a place that I ever thought that I could reach. And to Scott and his team, I owe it all to them for sure.
There was a happening that I think is important to mention that I talked to Scott Palmer about. And Scott and I don't mean to go all Stephen A. Smith on ESPN here and say everybody's my best friend, but I go way back with Scott Palmer. I've known this dude since like 2001 or 2. So I've known him a really long time. And I was talking to Scott about your licensing process. And I think it's fairly well known at this point that you were intending to go out to the NHRA Mile High Nationals in Denver, of course, sponsored by Dodge and SRT, two of big longtime supporters of Drag Illustrated. So I want to make sure they know we appreciate them. But you were headed out there to run Pro Mod. The Elite Motorsports camp decides that they're going to park the Pro Mod cars for the time being. You need a ride. You reach out to Scott Palmer. And I think the story here is the licensing process. Scott tells me this story that he goes, hey, man, most young drivers, most guys that are new to this, they're going to want to go license at Vegas. They're going to want to go to the Strip at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. They're going to want to go to ZMAX or Indy, one of these big tracks, wide tracks, lots of shutdown. I told him, Alex, I'm sorry, but the car is already set up. The truck and trailer's out. I've got a match race this weekend at Wichita International Raceway in Kansas, which for the hardcores on here today, this is a nitty-gritty little drag strip in Kansas, an awesome place I've been to many times with my family, but not exactly the place that you want to earn your license in a Top Fuel dragster. Can you take me through that whole scenario? Because I think we're going to create some fans of Alex Laughlin here real quick, because not very many people would be willing to get their license at a place like that.
Well, you started it out with saying that most people would want to go to a Vegas or a Charlotte, the long shutdown wide tracks. I 100% would still fall into that category. But then you followed up with the willingness, and that's what it came down to. I had to do whatever I had to do. And yeah, I'll admit, it made the butterflies a little bit bigger for sure. Leading up the night before, I was a little nervous for sure. The shutdown there, it is a little bumpy, especially for a car with no suspension, right? The suspension is literally in the chassis. So you're like going through the shutdown area and you feel the belly of that dragster just scraping the ground. It's not a place for a Top Fuel car to run for sure. But at the end of the day, Scott told me, he's like, I'm not worried about you running this car. I completely have faith in you. And that's all I could base it off of. He said that he had talked to Frankie Taylor, and if Frankie has the things to say about my driving, then it's good for him. And that's all I could lean on is like, man, I don't know what's up with this car. I don't know what it's about. I don't know anything about it. So I just have to trust Scott. Like if he's good with me driving it and thinks I can do it, then God, I hope I can.
I clearly, according to Scott, you answered the bell and you carried that momentum over to the Mile High Nationals. You qualified your first time out. You were there. We had some issues, I guess, in the first round of eliminations, but those things are going to happen. Drag racing is going to be drag racing, man. But you delivered for your sponsors. You were there. You put on a show. You did the burnouts. We got the pictures, the incredible wide angle shots of those glorious stands at Vandermeer Speedway. Shout out to my buddy Sporty Vandermeer celebrating his birthday today. But you got everything you needed. You did what you had to do, and you're headed to Indy, man. How confident are you headed into this weekend? How excited are you to go be a part of the biggest drag race in the world in the most talked about, the most celebrated categories our sport has ever known?
Yeah, I mean, it's our Super Bowl. It's the biggest one that we've got, and to be racing it in the pinnacle category of NHRA drag racing, it's like
pinch me moment.
Yeah, I'm kind of a softie sometimes. My eyes are kind of getting leaky. But yeah, it's crazy. It really is. It's absolutely insane. I was lucky enough to win the race in Pro Stock back in 2019, and to be able to show up and run Top Fuel. Something's happening to my voice also. It's really weird.
Dude, I got goosebumps and chills. I'm a big softie. I mean, I appreciate it, Alex. And I appreciate that honesty and candid commentary here on this show, because that's what we're here for, is unfiltered conversations about the sport of drag racing, the sport we all love, man. And we ask all the time for people to show us that you mean it. And right here today, man, you're doing exactly that. I appreciate it, brother.
I do, for sure. And man, it may be 7 days away. It may be 7 years away, but one of these days I plan to hold a Top Fuel Wally. Where's my hand? Right there. So it'd be cool to do it in Indy. That's for sure. But
well, we cannot wait to see this deal unfold, man. Alex, thank you so much for the time. We look forward to seeing you in a couple of days. Please be safe. Best of luck to you, man. And we'll see you at the NHRA US Nationals.
Good luck, Alex. Thanks, man.
Thanks, brother. All right, guys. Well, this is one that I've been excited about for a while, Matt. Excuse me, Mike. Bringing this guy on the show, and we're gonna go ahead.
Sorry, another the pro mod to funny car crossover.
Oh, I know. I cannot wait.
Quite a bit larger than we're giving credit for.
It's more significant than people realize,
yeah.
And I find it interesting because it's almost always door slammer, pro mod to fuel. There's not a lot of people that are willing to go back the other way. Like, you go have conversations around the starting line when pro mod's running with a Jack Beckman or with a John Force or with a Ron Capps. Most of them want no part of door slammer drag racing, specifically pro mods, right? We've seen some wild and crazy moments from these cars over the years, and they all kind of look at it with a certain amount of awe and jaw-droppedness. But Matt Hagan has absolutely done it. He's made that climb. I got to tell you guys, let's welcome to the show what I believe to be maybe the most physically intimidating drag racer of all time, the Unstoppable Force, a real drag racing hero, your NHRA funny car points leader, the Unstoppable Force himself, Matt Hagan. What's going on, brother?
What's up, guys? How are y'all? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, man.
Boom!
I don't know.
That's what you got to do.
There we go.
Oh, my goodness.
You got to get a whole nother screen for that deal.
Sweet G, are you on straight horse meat at this point in time, Matt? I mean, is that kind of the program that you guys just slaughter them out in the field?
Anything I can, and yeah, that's tight shirts and anything I can eat, man. You know what I mean?
Tight shirt, same deal here, brother. I like to go. I walk into Gap and I walk straight to the kids section. That's what I do. I walk into Gap, I go straight back, look for like a youth medium, a youth large. That's kind of where I like to hang, man. But seriously, Matt, let's dive right into this. And thank you for being a part of this deal, brother. Truly appreciate it a lot. I know you're busy. I know you're getting ready to head out
having me on the show.
To the big go. No problem, dude. I'm curious. We had John Force on the show last week, and we didn't really dive too deep into this deal. You're in his spat a few weeks ago. John was kind of doing his own thing, talking about whatever John wants to talk about. But I would like to go ahead and do that right now. You seemed genuinely pissed off, to be honest. That felt like a real, honest reaction. That was an authentic moment. Can you take us through that whole situation? It was the talk of town, and then it kind of got, I think, a little bit overshadowed by the staging duel between Bruno Massel and the McGahey son. Chris McGahey, right? Mason McGahey, right. My bad. Force rolls in, double bulbs you. I want your immediate reaction. What exactly did you think in that moment?
Well, I really didn't know what was going on, because I rolled up there, and our crew chief had just barely walked away, from turning the barrel valve, it's one of those things where you're going like, what's going on? I didn't know if his crew chief was still in the lanes up there, or he had already really actually rolled it in and double bulbed like that. For me, it was just kind of like what's this? And then so I was like, well, this he's double bulbed me, and so I was like, man, maybe I should just let him sit there for a while. You know what I mean? Like, but I was like, nah, I'm gonna go on in here and do my thing and whatever. I went ahead and staged the car, and he came on in. Did my thing or whatever, and we left, and I guess I had a 59 light or something, or 56 or something to his 109 or something. I don't know what it was, but if it was, whether it's a rookie or whether it's John Force or anybody, I walked over there and I was just like, hey man, cut this shit out. You're a better driver than that. There's no need for you to have to do that kind of stuff up there. And he came over to my pit or my tow vehicle and basically started poking me in the chest and telling me he was John Force and he could do anything that he wanted. He threw his shit down and stomped off. And he's like, I don't have to answer to you or do anything like that. I'm doing everything within the rules, and it's my right to do so. And I said, that's fine, man. I said, I'm just telling you to cut the shit out. I said, I got respect for you, and I think that's disrespectful the way you did that. And that's just basically all it came out to be. Was I felt like he was being disrespectful, and he doesn't show any respect for anybody that he races, when it comes to starting line stuff. And, as a driver, most fans don't understand it, but as a driver, we have a procedure of the way we do things up there. And the reason we talk about double bulbs is because, it doesn't happen. If it was something that happened all the time, then no big deal. But we just don't do that as drivers to each other. So when it does happen, it's a show of either disrespect or that you messed up. And if you messed up and I walked over there and said, hey, dude, cut that shit out, you'd say, hey, man, sorry, my bad, won't happen again. But he took the time to come over and poke me in my chest and tell me that he was John Force. And, it was just running through my head. I was like, damn, man, it's not going to be good for me to grab a 72-year-old man up here. So I just kind of let him say what he had to say and move on. But, it's, anytime you talk about John Force, the keyboard warriors come out, and, I'm surprised they didn't hang me up on the end of my trailer and put, stakes through my hands and everything else. I mean, it's, you just pretty much get crucified because he is John Force. But, for me, I don't really care. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't matter whether it's a rookie or John, so I'm going to call you out on it. Yeah. I mean, it's just my thing, man. Like I've always wore it on my sleeve, and it is what it is. And I call it how it is, and I knew it was going to kind of come down and all the John Force warriors were going to come out and all this other stuff, but it doesn't really affect me. At the end of the day, it's a respect thing. I felt like he was being disrespectful. I called him out on it, and that's what it was.
And do those type of things ever see resolution, or is that just like, hey man, you avoid me and I'll avoid you? Because obviously, let's be honest, you guys aren't going to street fight in the hallways of the hotel or anything. But moving forward, it's like, hey, you've basically let me know how you feel. I've let you know how I feel, and we'll carry on with business. Yeah,
and business is normal for me, man. And John's getting what John doesn't realize. It's kind of something that so blows my mind with John is that he thinks that he's doing something by rolling it in deep like that. He doesn't even realize that he just swaps numbers. His crew chief should be patted on the back every day for being able to run so well and still have lane choice sometimes for him rolling it in that deep, But John, he's been under drag races so long, and it blows my mind that he doesn't understand that by him rolling it in deep like that or playing games up there like that, it's only taken away from his ET and his elapsed time out there to be able to have lane choice and do different things like that. And, for me, like, business is normal because John's getting left on anyway, you know what I mean? So it's like, why would I change anything I'm doing, when he's up there trying to figure out something to do so he can try to find some advantage to leave because he's not leaving well anymore.
It's interesting to me because we hear so frequently from racers, Matt, that, don't care who's in the other lane, right? I'm running my own race, and I totally respect that. And I would never, ever try to convince somebody to look at it differently. But I will argue that, like in every other sport, it may be a nameless, faceless person, but you learn. We hear that a lot in mixed martial arts, right? Nate Diaz is fighting Conor McGregor, and it's Conor telling you that I don't care who that is. I don't care who he is. I don't care what he looks like. I don't care his style. A fight's a fight. But the truth is, you learn the nuances of that opponent, right? You learn about what they like to do. You learn about their preferences. How much is that part of your strategy? Because I think that that's a real thing that happens that racers don't like to talk about. Because, I'm here to tell you that the entire world respects you, Matt, and the racing world respects you. But the truth of the matter is, I believe, whether racers are willing to admit it or not, that you race, you know who's in that other lane. You know what they like to do. You know their tendencies. Oh, yeah. Is that true?
100%. Yeah, like, you know, no, with John, you give him a 6 count before you go in because he's slow to come in. So you don't want to be out on the pedal very long. So you go 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, all the way to 6, and then you pull your pumps on and you come in. Because if you pull your pumps on and come in, you're sitting there with your foot off the clutch and the pumps on, for a good 6-second count, and then he's going to take another 4 or 5 to come in. So
that's after put a cylinder out, right? I mean, you got that thing pour both all the fuel it'll
clutch
take.
Is getting hot, everything. Yeah,
it's a very interesting thing, and everything. Man. No, I think that it's important that these things get talked about. I mean, personally, putting back on my Vince McMahon hat, I'm looking at that all year long. Like, hey, how can we celebrate and talk about these individual matchups? Go ahead. I'm sorry I cut you off. Cruz.
Yeah. No, you're fine. Like Cruz, he doesn't like to turn the top bull bone first. You know what I mean? So like he'll wait till the first person's in a lot of times, or like Alexis, she's the same way. She doesn't like to be top bull bone and stuff like that. So you do, as a driver, learn cadence of other drivers. Now, like Robert Height, like, dude, I love that guy's style, man. Like, that's someone out of the Force camp that I have so much respect for. That's a great leaver, that races his race car, that puts the car in there. He's basically does a burnout, backs up as quick as he can, stages a car as quick as he can. He's like, let's go race, boom, boom. And that's my type of style of racing. Like, I love running Robert because it's no games, it's no bullshit up there. It's like, let's put this cars in here, let's go race our race. And he's a great lever. You know what I mean? So you're going to be up for Robert because he's like, he's going to tattoo me if I don't get up on the tree for him, But there's no games either. It's just like, let's just go race the car. You know what I mean? And that fires me up, man, because I'm like, this guy's no BS. He's coming in here to race. He's got a good race car underneath him. He's a great lever. And that makes you as a driver go like, I better have my stuff together. You know what I mean?
It's fantastic, Matt. Switching gears a little bit, but not a lot. I mean, hey, I got to be honest here. I've been texting you like immediately following every single time you're on camera lately. And it's not like I'm trying to be obnoxious or a bother, but I genuinely think that it's important for me and for the world to give you some positive reinforcement and pat you on the back for what I believe has been a real coming of age as a drag racing personality. I mean, let's be honest, you don't lack resume wise, right? Not 1, not 2, but 3 rings. You don't need any more accomplishments. A real shot at a 4th here in 2021. Accomplishment wise, you've done it all. But I truly believe I've seen you enter a new phase of your career when it comes to doing interviews and, like, to use some more pro wrestling talk, cut promos. I mean, there were wrestlers back in the glory days of the WWF, still today, that were horrible wrestlers. Horrible. I mean, Hulk Hogan is known as one of the worst wrestlers of all time, but man, could he cut a promo, right? Man, could he sell it. And that's why Hulk Hogan ascended to the levels that he did. And I'm just curious, has this been a conscious decision for Matt Hagan to kind of like let it all hang out a little bit, to let yourself go? Or has this just kind of happened organically as you've gotten more comfortable with who you are as an adult and a grown man here and now?
Well, it's just that I still have so much passion for what I'm doing, man. You know what I mean? I think that, even after 13, 15 years, I mean, if you count pro mod now, I guess it's closer to 20 years. I just still love the sport and I love what I'm doing. And I love that I'm still able to do it, and so the passion for me is just like, when I won, Denver, it was something that I've been wanting to do for so long. And somebody puts so much pressure on you all the time to do it. And we haven't got it done. And to do that, to win that, it was unbelievable. And it was just like, just the emotion and the passion and just all pours out, and but it's like that for every race. And I think that sometimes, you see guys like Force or Tony Schumacher or different things like that that's won all these races. And it's just kind of like, almost seems like it's just like they're not excited about it sometimes, and it's just like, for me, I just can't, every time we hold a trophy up, it just, the passion for it comes out, and it's just, you work so hard and it's so humbling. This is one of the most humbling sports I've ever been involved with. And, it's just like, you can do it all right and still get it wrong because you're at the mercy of the parts and the pieces. And it takes everything to do it right. And for me, it's just like, I'm just enjoying life, man. And I'm just living it and loving it. And I'm blessed to be doing it. And, just very, very grateful, you know what I mean? And it's just, there's so many people that want to do what we're doing. I mean, you just had Alex on the show here, and I was listening to some of that, and it was just, that's a great kid and he's going to do great things, but his next goal is to hold up a Wally and Top Fuel, And so, and that's a huge thing to do. There's a lot of people out here that haven't done that, you know, and when that happens, it's a special moment that, you know, nobody can buy it. Nobody can, you know, you can't go out here and steal it. You can't do it. I mean, you have to earn it, you know, and same with the championships. But you know, some people forget, not talking about just a championship, just to earn a Wally is incredibly hard to do sometimes. You know, I mean, you think about these guys like Johnny Gray and Morgan Lucas and all these people that had unlimited amount of money. You know, look at Alexis DeJoria, you know, her dad owns Paul Mitchell, you know, I mean, like unlimited amount of money, you know, and it's not something that you can buy, you know what I mean? You have to put a group
We've seen
of
that
people
run
together.
people out, right? I mean, we've seen
Yeah.
the inability to buy victory in drag racing send people into retirement.
Yeah. I mean, it really does. I mean, it's unbelievable. And, you know, so you have to have a group of people that work hard, that are motivated, that are driven, that are passionate, that are smart, you know, and that's really been the success of my career as I've been able to put smarter, harder working, more motivated, very driven people around me. And I just don't mess it up, brother. And that's all what it comes down to.
It's been an awesome thing to see, man. And I appreciate that because I text you right after I was watching the Mile High Nationals on Fox, trying to show my support. And you go through the traps and you're whipping the wheel and you get out and you're grabbing the camera and losing your mind. And I immediately text you, like, I don't care if you don't read this for 6 weeks, but you need to hear that that's what we need to see from you. That's what we need to see from the stars of our sport, because and as soon as you demonstrate to us, not just me, the entire racing fan base, how much this means that you're willing to lose your mind. And it's this huge celebration, this huge moment. I heard stories about you blowing off interviews and stuff to stay down on the starting line and engage with fans. Those are the stories that, in my opinion, create legends, right? Folk heroes in our sport. And I appreciate you really putting on a show for us, Matt. You're in the points lead right now with some really heavy hitters packed in right behind you. Bob Tasca, J.R. Todd, John Force, Ron Capps, Robert Height, Cruz Pedregon making some moves here as we head into the playoffs. The countdown, if you excuse me. Let's go back to you getting your feet wet in a door car on those nitty-gritty 8th miles throughout the Carolinas, running Pro Mod and IHRA. I remember shooting you for the cover of the magazine. I think you were at it was an IHRA national event, maybe in Houston. I'm just curious, what's it like?
You were like one of my first interviews, man.
I think so, dude. I was just so excited to see a young, cool guy. Like, that's what I saw. Like, I looked at our sport at that time, and all the big names for the most part were like 25, 30 years older than me. And I thought, from like a growing the sport perspective, man, we need young, like clean-cut, marketable people behind the wheel of these cars. It's important. It can't just all be old rich guys. Like, we need people like this. And we jumped right on the Matt Hagan bandwagon. And I'm just curious, all those years later, Mike, JT, we would have been smart to have the cover from like 12 or however many years ago. Somebody should dig that up real quick. Mike, if you can find it. But I'm curious, what's it like seeing your name not only amidst a slew of first ballot Hall of Famers and world champions and legends, but out in front of them? I mean, did you ever anticipate this getting to this point, Matt?
No, I really didn't. I never even really thought I'd be in a fuel car, you know, and I had a sponsor at the time. You know, we all know Evan Knoll with Torco, and you know, at the time he called me up and was like, "Hey, I want you in a fuel car." And I said, "Man, I don't know if I want to go that fast," you know. And so he was like, "Well, here's $3 million, or I'm going to give it to somebody else." And I was like, "I'm not going to turn down $3 million, you know." So we jumped in a funny car there with Creasy and then Wilkerson's car, and you know, and it looked like I was so far behind the race car. It looked like a snake going down the racetrack, you know, and it was just all over the place. And I come back and I thought Wilkerson was going to give me a high five because I got it to the end. And he was like, "Don't ever drive like that again." He's like, "Kid, that's the stupidest shit I've ever seen." You know, so, you know, it was one of those things. It's a huge learning curve. And I don't think you're ever ahead of these cars. I think you're with them. You know what I mean? You try to be with them. But I never imagined being here, to be honest with you. And just blessed to be here and blessed to be having a group around me. And Dickie Venables, I mean, he's unbelievable, man. I mean, we've I guess if you look at our winning record in the last, you know, 10 years or so compared to everybody else's, I mean, we pretty much, our record kills it as far as wins, you know, combined with the amount of you know, time that we've had in the sport. So Dickie is getting it done, man. I mean, and he's unbelievable. I mean, I wouldn't trade him for anyone out here. I know everybody likes Jimmy Prock, and you got a bunch of folks out here that just, that can get it done. But I just wouldn't trade Dickey for anybody. I mean, he truly stands out and shines when he needs to. He's a great racer on Sunday. He knows how, and he leans on me too. I mean, he's like, man, if you give me a couple hundreds on the tree, I don't have to push it as hard over here. We'll go down the racetrack. We'll turn the wind light on, that kind of stuff like that. So we truly do try to race on Sunday. We don't just go out there and try to lay down the fastest number or whatever we can. I mean, it is really racing on Sunday, and we talk about everything up there in the lounge, the data. He goes over the graph with me, and I tell him where I felt like it was a little fast or it had too much wheel speed here. And we really do share a lot of information up there with what I'm feeling in the race car, what he's seeing on the graphs and the calls and changes that he's making. So we really have clicked, especially over the last 6 years. I think it's been really good where I feel like we're a solid unit as far as what we can talk to each other and share information. And my assistant crew chief, Mike Knutson, he's going to be a crew chief one day, very soon, probably within the next couple of years. And I'm going to hate to lose that guy, but
Right.
it's one of those things where you're always happy when someone can move up and step up and do better for themselves. And he's one of those guys that you watch. The next couple of years, he'll end up running one of these cars out here. And whoever has him is going to end up with a really good crew chief.
I've heard that Dickey is exceptionally calm. Matt Ambrosiak from Matt with the Hair, I call him, from Dodge in the JRT group. He has told me in the past, Matt said that he's, Matt's been around a lot of different crew chiefs or whatever. And I think, he kind of leans to the media side or whatever. So a lot of us in the media, like, we feel like we're bothering people, right? Asking questions or whatever. And he said to me that out of all the crew chiefs he's encountered, most of them get all up in arms on Sunday or up in arms around time to run the car. Don't bother me. Leave me alone. I'm thinking, staring at the ground. He said that's not the case with Dickey. He goes, you can walk up to this dude like 8 minutes before we fire the car for the final. And if you ask him, like, what time is it? He's just going to tell you. Like, there's no, and I find that kind of, how much does that benefit you, that laid back, calm coolness that people seem to see from Dickey Venables?
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty laid back for sure. I mean, there's times when there's a lot of chatter in my ears sitting in the car, and I almost want to just turn my mic off,
Right.
But they're making decisions and calls on the wing and clutch and tire pressure and, fuel and everything, So it's like there's a lot of decisions being made a lot of times. But Dickey is super laid back. He's been doing it for a long time, so he's seen a little bit of everything. And I think that, with the decisions that he makes, he is very confident in them,
Right.
most of the time. I mean, there's been very few times that he's come back and he'd be like, damn, that wasn't what we were supposed to do. You know what I mean? Most of the time. And that's what I love about Dickey too, is he swings for the fence, man. I mean, he's, I guess it was when we were pitching these headers back and, we were laying down these numbers between us and Jimmy Prock, you know what I mean? And Robert Height. I mean, it was just like record after record after record after record. And it was just like, this is cool. You know what I mean? Like it was one of those things where you put your mouthpiece in and you pulled your belts down tight and you're like, we're going to go for a ride. You know what I mean? But it was unbelievable, and it was something that I'll never forget the rest of my life, as far as even winning championships and stuff like that. Just when we were pushing these cars with thrust and being able to run as fast as we were. I mean, I went 338. I think Robert went 339. I think he still holds the record, but we were going to top that 340 mark, I was the first ever in the threes, the first ever in the 380s, and then I missed it by one run by being the first ever in the 370s, and Robert got it, but at the end of the day, we did it the next race, and I was like, man, come on, Dick, you couldn't have done it one race earlier, but it was one of those things.
I think it's awesome to hear that, like how much those type of individual accolades mean to you guys as a racer.
Oh man, yeah, it was awesome. I mean, because we were setting world records like left and right, and these cars were just running like crazy, and it was just like, that's what we're here to do. We're here to put on a show for the fans, and that's talking about what the top end interviews and stuff like that, and passing my trophy around and staying with the fans down there. I mean, everybody wants to rush up to media, and I was like, the media can wait, or the media could come down here to me and we'll get an interview. But these people stayed after the race to come, take a picture with you and get an autograph and hold the trophy. I mean, most people have never held a Wally before, and as a fan, when they do that, it's something super special, and they'll bring the pictures back next year and have you sign them and stuff like that. I mean, it truly means something to them, and so, I know that media is important, don't get me wrong, but But if it's that important, they can walk their ass down there to the lanes and get an interview. You know what I mean? And get out of their AC for a little bit. I've been sweating all day. They can sweat a little bit too, right? But no, it's just, I mean, the top end stuff. It's just one of those things where we are here to put on a show. We are showmen, and John Force says it best, man. I blew up one time and I split my eyes open. Like on my right here where you cut your eyebrows. Like it bleeds a lot. Just whenever you nick your head, it bleeds and stuff. And so my head had rotated in my viewport in my helmet and it split my eyebrows open, and I was bleeding and I was in the ambulance and stuff. And Force opened up the ambulance. He said, "Kid, you okay?" I said, "Yeah, man, I'm all right." He said, "Well, next time," he said, "I'm glad you're okay." He said, "But next time, roll around on the ground and act like you're on fire." He said, "You'll get more TV like that, And I said, "You're crazy, man."
Oh, that's awesome. But hey, man, you talk about a guy who gets it, right? I mean, it's and I do think it's worth mentioning that you can't count that guy out. I honestly, it's amazing to me that he's in the thick of things the way that he is right now, right? I mean, it's incredible that he's. Dude, how is it at 72 that he's like in the countdown? Like he's a real threat.
Brother, I was sitting in the car the other day and I was sitting there, and I'm a little fat and out of shape or whatever, but I was pulled down tight in the car and I was going like, this sucks. Like I was sweating my ass off, and then I looked over and I was like, hell, Force has been sitting in there longer than I have. I said, why don't you suck it up and get over it? You know what I mean?
Oh, I'm massively impressed by it, man. It's an incredible thing to think about someone. I can see it both ways. There's a part of me that goes, man, John, it's time, like get out of the way. Like, and I've said that to him. I mean, I don't mean it disrespectfully. I mean, I'm the biggest fan. I really am. But he absorbs so much of the spotlight that's available, right? Like if there's 10 units of stardom or light to go around at an NHRA national event, shit, John gets 6, 7 of it, right? 6, 7 units. So it leaves 3 to go around. And there are times that I'm going, hey, the more we phase him out, the more, attention that we can give to these up and comers and these other very talented, very deserving talents.
And NHRA, whether they like it or not, are going to have to bring a new star up, whether whoever that may be, Alexis Ajoria or J.R. Todd or Ron. I mean, somebody young and up and coming, they're going to have to put their limelight and their stardom around someone new in the sport. I mean, it just the sport won't survive if they keep continuing to push John Force. I mean, he can step back and be a great team owner, and people will come out to see him because of that stuff. But the sport needs a new face and a new name, and that's the only way it's going to survive. I mean, it's one of those things. John has done all that John can do for the sport. I mean, he's just been tremendous for it. There's no way around how much he's won and what he's done for it. I mean, you can't take that away from the guy at all. I mean? So he is the star and always will be the star. But at the end of the day, the NHRA has to start bringing up a new star for people to root around and to promote and to be on the billboards and all that kind of stuff. And whoever they pick, it's fine. It doesn't, I mean, to me, it doesn't really matter. They just have to pick someone new, and it's just one of those things where, they have to start promoting that now, you know what I mean? Because it's one of those things where it's not going to happen overnight. You have to create a superstar inside itself,
It's it's a real craft. I mean, we see it all the time. And I mean, we've seen the NBA do it. We've seen the NFL do it, right? I mean, for years and years and years, Tom Brady was, I think, inarguably the face of the NFL. Anytime there was a highlight, anytime there was a commercial, anytime there was a clip or an endorsement or a PSA or whatever, they're throwing Tom Brady at it. In recent years, Patrick Mahomes is becoming the face of the NFL. And that's a strategic conversation. Like that's something people are sitting around a boardroom going, hey, we've got to get behind this young guy. He's got a following. He's charismatic. He's got all the intangibles. He's successful on the field. I think the same can be said for the NBA, UFC. It's no secret that I'm a big combat sports fan. And it's like, you look at that sport and they've recognized there was a time when, what's a good one? Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz were the face of the UFC. But as those guys started to age, the UFC recognized like, okay, who's going to be next, right? And it's going to be this guy, and it's going to be this guy. And they recognize that they've got to be building stars while they have a star. I mean, Conor McGregor, I think, still the face of the UFC, but they were developing him while they had Ronda Rousey. So it's a strategic thing that I would love to see the NHRA embark on. I guess to let you go, Matt, and I know you gotta bounce here. Just look forward to Indy. The start of the countdown. Are you feeling good? I mean, a lot of teams like to see this. We're starting to get momentum at the right time. I feel like you've had kind of momentum since the onset, but do you guys feel like you're going to be able to maintain this momentum here in drag racing's playoff series?
It's a dogfight out there right now. I mean, it's split between 5 or 6 cars, and it's one of those things where it's anybody's. It's just you can have a bad race or you can have a bunch of good races. The thing about the countdown coming up is you got to win 2 or 3 of those races out of the 6. And to be able to put a ring on your finger, and we know what we got to do. I feel like Dickie is really starting to get his confidence as far as we finally got our power back. And when you get your power, then you have to kind of like bring your fuel curve to it. And what I'm seeing up there in the lounge is that he's really getting a handle on the fuel curve, and the power has been staying good the last couple races, and so that shows a lot of confidence in what he's doing, and then that gives me confidence on the starting line to do what I need to do. I feel like my lights have been great, so I'm just trying to do my job, not be the weak link, and obviously give us all the advantage I can up there on the starting line, but my confidence in Dickie has been growing the last couple races, and we've been turning on win lights. And I think that good cars out there, you can't knock any of them out there. I mean, it's just been, basically a swap, back and forth with.
Oh, we're losing Matt a little bit here. I bet he's getting a phone call, if I had to guess. We'll bring him back right here. Let's see if it'll pick back up. Apologies, guys. We lean on the World Wide Web, and it does so much for us so well. But every once in a while, we have a little bit of technical difficulties. We were about out of time with Matt anyways. I think we may lose him. Murder Tundra, I'd ask that you reach out to Matt real quick and tell him that we wish him luck, and we hope to see him again soon. Be safe and take care this weekend at the U.S. Nationals. I'll be sure to swing by and see him. Is that you handling that, Murder Tundra? All right, guys. Well, hey, we are headed into, what is this, the second hour? Right here on the Drag Illustrated YouTube channel, of course, also streaming on Facebook. Real quick, I would like to throw out here, please click like, click share, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're uploading content to our YouTube channel every single day. I've challenged the team here at Drag Illustrated to make sure that we have a new video to upload every day of the week. We have hit that mark for the last several weeks consecutively. Check out the Drag Illustrated YouTube channel. We would love to have you take part of that content, be a part of the conversation. And I want to just say thank you from the bottom of my heart, not only to my team here, our guests today thus far, Matt Hagan, Alex Laughlin. These are incredible ambassadors for the sport of drag racing. But I want to thank all of you. The comments, the engagement, all these thoughts and feelings that we get from you are so important. And please keep it coming. Let us know where you're watching from. Let us know if you're headed to Indy. Please participate in this deal, because that conversation, that real interaction makes all the difference in the world. And I do think we got Matt back here real quick. Matt, we lost you for a second. I just wanted to tell you, buddy, thank you so much for being a part of this, for kind of letting your hair down and giving us the real dirt. Please be safe this weekend at the U.S. Nationals. Good luck. We genuinely hope you leave there with another Wally and in good shape for a 4th ring. I plan on coming by and see you. Let's hang out a little bit. Uh-oh.
Yeah, do that, man. Hey, listen.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to say thank you to, I want to say thank you as well, man, Wes. Your career was, you basically were on the scene before I was, man. And I've always kind of looked up to you, man, and I'm really proud of what you've done out here and, promoting the sport and what we're doing, and really proud of you, brother. So it goes a long ways, and I appreciate you keeping up with me as well.
Thank you, brother, man. I appreciate it a lot. Been a big fan for a long time. I just have a ton of respect and admiration for what you do, and I'm glad you notice. It means a lot to not only me, but everybody that's a part of this deal. I get to be out front a lot, but there's a whole lot of incredible people that have made this thing. It's hard to believe, dude. 15 years we've been printing Drag Illustrated magazine. We've sent 170 issues of the magazine to print. I couldn't be more proud of what we've done. And I can't wait to see what happens next, man. So thank you for being a part of it all these years. I look forward to seeing you this weekend. I'm looking for like a meal plan and a workout program. Thanks, brother.
Just tight shirts, man. Tight shirts. See you, brother.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a barn burner. Am I wrong? Real quick, before we introduce to our next guest here, I want to bring my partner in crime, Mike Carpenter, on here. Man, I hope you heard what Matt had to say, because you've been a huge part of Drag Illustrated magazine almost since the onset. Literally since we got this whole deal started. You've been right there beside me through so much of it, man, and it feels good, right, to just to know that someone as accomplished as Matt Hagan appreciates what we do, man. So thank you. And I just wanted to make sure that you heard what the man had to say, because it's a big deal.
The whole time. You couldn't miss some of the stuff he was saying. I mean, that kind of stuff is why we're here, why we're doing this, right? You see what you see on the NHRA broadcast, but to get all that insight and really just raw emotion and opinion from Matt, and then also the raw emotion from Alex as well, you really see why we dig into these guys, right? Why we feature these types of guys, and why we feel like they have a story to tell. So it's just awesome to see those guys coming on here and just letting it all hang out.
It's awesome, man. So I guess without further ado, as we head closer and closer to the finish line, guys, I got to be honest, I think the whole world, drag racing world, if you will, might be waiting for this conversation. Be there no doubt that Street Outlaws No Prep Kings has seemingly become the epicenter of the drag racing universe here in late summer 2021. It's unavoidable. Everywhere you look, it is painfully obvious. You really cannot escape talk and controversy surrounding No Prep Kings. Love it, loathe it. It has people across the drag racing landscape talking, and we count that here at Drag Illustrated as a huge victory for every single one of us that are involved in the sport of drag racing or car culture in general. Ladies and gentlemen, the race master himself, an OG member of the Street Outlaws gang, Chris Boosted Hamilton. What's up, brother? Welcome to the show, man.
What's going on? Can y'all hear me?
We can, and you sound good, dude. I think you may have done a podcast or two.
How do you like it? How do you like my lighting? Like, do I have it going on?
I think you look better than all of us.
Really?
I mean, we're going to have to start over.
What about my beard? I grew it just for you, Wes.
It looks good, bro. It really does, man. I'm trying. It takes me like 6 months at sea to get this.
I was going to say, that's probably half a year of work there for you. Yeah.
That is half a year of work for me, man. Well, hey, Thank you so much for joining us, brother. I appreciate it a lot. Chris, I want to get nostalgic, like right off the bat. Let's wax poetic a little bit. Let's tell stories here. And let me make sure that I share this on Facebook, that the man himself is on here with us. What do you make of all of this? I mean, if you look back, you're out here doing your thing, racing on the street, the legendary yellow Mustang that we all know and love. I still have an affinity for that car personally. You guys start organizing these cash days events that really explode on the internet, on YouTube. I think we got to give some credit to Kyle Loftus and the gang at 1320 Video that caught a lot of those early cash days events. I knew that there was an underground energy that was building. Next thing you know, Street Outlaws debuts or premieres on the Discovery Channel. You guys are amongst the biggest stars in car culture, moving up like incredibly, leapfrogging some of the biggest stars the sport of drag racing has ever known. And now you're at the center of the No Prep Kings spinoff. There's a dozen other spinoffs. It seems like automotive content is all over all these major channels. I mean, does any of this feel real? I mean, you're a dad. You're a regular guy. You just told me you were going to be late because you're picking up your kiddo from school. I mean, what's this situation even like for you?
Yeah, Wes. I mean, let's just start at the beginning. You know, back in 2013, 14, whenever they approached all of us about this show, you know, all of us, you know, like Chief, Dave, we all thought that it was the cops with some underground like sting to arrest us as we were street racing on camera, right? So, you know, to look at that, where it was when it started to where it is now. I mean, none of us thought that it would continue longer than a season, much less 2 seasons, 3 seasons now into we're racing on, you know, tracks in front of thousands of people on TV. I mean, you know, no one ever thought that would happen. I mean, I'm a dumb street racer, you know, I'm not supposed to be doing this stuff. So it's like surreal is the way to put it.
I mean, how much, I mean, I guess to be honest, it's kind of crazy that you said that 2013, because that felt like a little bit of a kick in the stomach, because at this stage in the game, it feels like 100 years ago. I mean, so much has happened, but that's less than 10 years back that you guys were racing in industrial areas in Oklahoma, largely unknown to the world out there. All these things are happening by way of message board. We talked about this a little bit last week. And now the stuff's on national television and people around the world know about it. I mean, you're a legit celebrity in our world. You're a part of pop culture, man. It's crazy.
It is crazy. And, to think back in the day before the show, like Wes, we were happy to be racing for $2,500. You know what I mean? We would all pay in $100 and there'd be 24 of us and it'd be a $2,400 payout. We're like, yeah, this is big money. And now, dude, we just aired a Mega Cash Days where it paid $100,000 to win. And dude, it's amazing. I never, ever in my wildest dreams would have thought that it got to where it's at. But I mean, you can't deny what it's done for drag racing. You know what I mean? I mean, oh my God, it's just sent it to another level.
I think that that's the biggest victory for all of this. And there's a lot of them that I want to talk about. But one of the things that I remember when we first put, not the entire cast, I can't remember if you were in that cover shoot that we did with Big Chief, Murder Nova. I remember Chuck was there, Farm Truck and Asian were there. We put you guys on the cover of Drag Illustrated magazine, and it was a real controversial thing when it happened. I didn't know. I was not, I mean, just to be completely candid and honest, I had no idea the pushback we were going to get. It was a big moment for me because I go, holy crap, a lot of people really care about what we put in this magazine. Like, oh my goodness, I had no idea that so many people cared. And that whole thing, I stood behind it though, and I wrote it and I put it in writing. And that's something that I still try to remind people about, the significance of the printed word, even here in 2021, when everybody's all about instant gratification and everybody wants it here and now, right now. There's a permanence to the written word, to the printed word. There's a gospel nature to it that I find still cuts through. And I remember feeling proud to send my editorial, my letter from the editor at the front of the magazine to press, because I can't delete that tweet, right? I can't edit
take it back.
I can't take it back. I'm going to put it in 15,000 mailboxes and I got to live with it. Yep. And I remember saying that I don't care if these guys are racing on the moon, in a school zone. I mean, I don't really care. The fact that I can turn on network television during prime time and see people doing burnouts, see smoking tires, wheel stands, header flames, I get goosebumps talking about it. You cannot tell me that's not a huge victory for our sport. I mean, it absolutely is. It brought car culture and hot rodding and racing back into the forefront, and it hadn't been for decades. So I'm infinitely thankful, and I want to say it right here. I mean, I think there's some belief that like Wes and the guys at Drag Illustrated don't respect what's happening at No Prep Kings, and I don't know that I care necessarily, but that's not the case, because we've been fans. We've supported this movement since before it was fashionable to do so, and it's so significant for our sport. So Chris, on behalf of drag racing, thank you, man, because what you guys have done is very, very, very important. And I think we all owe Street Outlaws and No Prep Kings and all of this Motor Trend, Discovery, Pilgrim Studios. There's a lot of people. We owe you a lot. We really do.
Yeah. And first of all, I appreciate you, saying that, because a lot of people won't say that, even though they think it. They're not going to come out and say it. So, I appreciate it. A lot of the guys in drag racing, in some forms of drag racing, may not approve of what we do, and that's okay. You know what I mean? It's not everybody's cup of tea, right? But we enjoy it, and it's only going to go up from here. It only gets bigger from here. I mean, I can't fathom it, but I just know it. It's just going to get bigger. So,
and is there any other? I mean, let me ask you this: the question I have written down is, do you personally see Street Outlaws, No Prep Kings specifically, as the biggest, or at least the most visible platform or stage in drag racing today?
Hands down, I think No Prep Kings is bigger than any other form of drag racing. You can't deny it, right? You can't deny the viewership. You can't deny the payouts. You can't deny the attendance. So, I mean, they all speak for themselves on the success of No Prep Kings.
Do you think, how many people on, like, as part of the cast of No Prep Kings, do you think are earning like real money, or like replace their job money from participation in the show?
Man, I don't know what everybody makes. I'm sure they get a little bit of money for their travel. I mean, I travel to all these races, and I still have an 8-to-5 job. So we're not quite making the Jersey Shore money, but we're making a little bit to offset. So, but again, I don't know what everybody makes. I can just.
But I mean, the opportunity, like from merch sales. I mean, I literally heard this story. I was sitting at a conference table yesterday, hearing stories about how many shirts the stars of the No Prep Kings sell. And to be honest, like, it's not been that long ago that was how a lot of the pro stock, pro mod match racing guys, that's how they earn their living. I mean, they got a little bit of money from the tracks, right? They got some bookend money, they got some travel money, but man, they're slinging shirts and bringing home duffel bags full of cash. So, I mean, I guess the reason I brought it up is I just don't know that there are very many other walks of the drag racing life here in 2021 where people are able to, I don't want to say turn their racing operation into super successful businesses, but maybe at least offset a good amount of the expense through payouts and through merch sales.
Yeah, I mean, merch sales for sure. You know, what little time I do get to walk through the pits at just a No Prep Kings event, I mean, the lines are like wrapped around the trailers and they're intertwined with each other. And then you got cars trying to go through it. And it's kind of a mess, but it's a good mess because these people are all there because they want to be able to see and feel and touch and talk to their favorite driver. And it's just, I can tell you there's people that I meet at these drag strips and they'll tell me, this is my first time to a drag strip ever. This is crazy. I've never even been to a drag strip before. And like that right there is amazing to me that we've reached that point of the audience to where they have decided, you know what, this is badass. I'm going to go to a drag race, my first drag race, and I want it to be No Prep Kings, right? It's just, and the experience they have is on the biggest stage. And it's just, it's just amazing to me. I mean, I can talk about that for hours.
It is, no, I mean, and that's what we're going to do right here. One of the things that I think it's important we talk about, and we can kind of carry this in to a lot of other No Prep Kings specific conversations. We can't have the race master of No Prep Kings on here and not talk about some of the controversies that we've seen, not, since its initial launch, but throughout the course of the last few weeks. Specifically, a couple of weeks ago, we had Stevie Fast Jackson and Justin Swanstrom going back and forth, videos getting made, the radial tire guys up in arms, the No Prep guys up in arms, a great moment for drag racing again. Then last week, I believe it was, you got Donald Long, one of drag racing's most celebrated promoters, founder of the Duck X Productions, puts on No Mercy, lights out the Sweet 16, did a bunch of great races during a really damaged COVID season, saying that No Prep King racers are charging for autographs and stirring up controversy. And then this last weekend, we had this whole starting line drama where, I mean, it's been a wild situation to say the least. And I don't know that I even fully understand the ins and outs of it, but I'm just curious. Can you kind of take us through that moment last weekend? I believe there was a gentleman's agreement not to guess the light. One guy guessed the light, Jerry Bird. He lives up to his agreement with Kai Kelly, the eventual race winner, I believe, correct, and skips the scales because he wants to honor his word. There was a lot of talk that this instantly brought into question the integrity of the competition that exists within No Prep Kings. I'm not here to make a big, bold statement, but I know a lot of you guys fairly well. I have a great relationship with people like Pat Musey and Justin Swanstrom, and all the reports that I ever get is like, hey, man, don't be fooled. This is real deal drag racing. There's no gimmies. It's not like that. Can you just kind of take us through that situation and let us know, kind of clear some of that up?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first and foremost, that situation right there is the beauty of No Prep Kings, right? I mean, we allow the racers, you're allowed to make your own decision, right? When it comes to racing, and that decision that Jerry made was up to Jerry. I mean, he made it, they had a strategy. He did what he had to do, right? And that's what makes this show great, because we're going to show you all the ins and outs of that decision and what the implications were and the discussions about that decision. Like, we're behind the scenes on everything that goes on. And, I like to, when I was listening to Matt Hagan's interview, he talked about when John Forrest walked up and was kind of poking him in the chest. That right there, if that happened in, say, No Prep Kings, you would have saw that. You would have saw that whole interaction, that exchange. And that is what sets No Prep Kings at a different level, I think, than NHRA. It reveals everything.
I think it's important, to your point, man. Like, those moments, I believe, need to be celebrated. And I don't mean to play devil's advocate here, but my immediate reaction, and I've heard a lot of this, like, I've been getting texts about it, like, oh, they finally showed their hand. This is all made up. It's a soap opera, blah, blah, blah. But what I kind of find to be interesting and worth talking about is that 2 weeks ago, the entire drag racing world is up in arms that the NHRA was so stuck in their decision-making process and so committed to like the integrity of the sport and the rules and all this, that they robbed us of what could have been the most epic pro stock first round that we've maybe seen in 20 years, right? I mean, the whole drag racing world was up in arms that the NHRA didn't bend in that moment when it made sense to bend. Man, it made sense to bend. Let these guys race. They've been sitting in the pre-stage beams for 4 minutes.
What a story.
What a story.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But competition, competition rules and integrity and the starter took over. And I understand that perspective, but we can't have it both ways, guys. We can't want to see these awesome, exciting moments unfold and then lose our minds when they happen because someone knew that, hey, this is what the story needed, right? The guy said he was going to DQ himself if they jumped. He did it.
Yeah. And this is not the first time there's been controversy in drag racing. There's always going to be controversy in drag racing.
Yes,
That's, you know what I mean? So, but like I said, we will show every part of that. You're going to see it, and that's just what sets it aside. That's what sets it apart.
I'm curious, is there a lot of prior thought put into, or what do you say, training, I think might be a good word, that the Pilgrim Studios or Discovery or the people that are involved with the actual production of the show, do they kind of talk to the cast and characters? Because that was something I was hearing from Matt. We were running low on time, so I didn't dive into it, and I kind of regret it now, because sometimes I wonder if the NHRA, wouldn't it be wise to be like, hey, let's train these guys up and tell them like, hey man, let it all hang out. Tell us how you feel. Say what you think. Don't hold back. Don't just thank your sponsors. Yeah. Do those conversations happen inside of No Prep Kings?
I mean, it's not conversations direct like that, but we all know that this is a TV show. So, the producers are like, hey, do what you want to do. If you want to be boring, be boring. You know what I mean? We don't have to show you. So it's kind of in your own hands on the character you want to portray. I mean, you want to be the boring guy, or you want to be the guy that talks a lot of crap and is trying to fist fight people or whatever. Like, which way do you want to go? I can tell you that Pilgrim doesn't say, hey, Bobby, it's now time for you to punch someone in the face. Like, they don't do any of that. You know what I mean? That's all on Bobby. So, and that's one of the things that some people like to say, you know what I mean? That it's scripted or whatever. And it's nothing like that at all.
Yeah, I don't think it's about, like, I've never ever felt it was scripted, but I have had moments where I looked at it and I go, man, are these guys just that smart? Like, and I know people are going to get mad at me for saying that because I sound like a blowhard or like I'm blowing smoke or whatever because you're on here. But like, I see it all the time. John Force is another great example. He took it upon himself to put himself out there and be that guy.
Yeah.
At some point in his career, he recognized, man, I better do something different. I better find a way to stand out.
Set your side apart. Yes, set yourself apart. Yeah.
And I see this whole group of people, and you're here telling us that no one's demanding that they do this. Nobody's scripting this behavior. So that just tells me that, man, these are guys that understand the way of the world in 2021, man. I mean, we've been trained by Kim Kardashian and Kanye West, all these other kind of like reality people and these people that show every aspect of their life. Man, that's what we expect in 2021. And I think the NHRA, and this isn't a negative thing, but a lot of traditional drag racing platforms are just kind of stuck in a different era.
Yeah. Yeah, they are, man. And people look at, altercations that happen in the drag strip and they're just like, oh my God, what's going on? But that's the entertainment factor, right? That is what grabs the people. People talk about that stuff for seasons to come, right? I mean, use the example of John Force. Everyone knows his name, and it's for a reason, right? I mean, he doesn't fall into the crowd. You can pick him out at first glance. I mean, but that's how he's built his character up. So he did a great job.
I couldn't agree more, man. When you look at the sport right now, one of the things I find is interesting is that we had Mike Murillo on here last week. We had some technical difficulties and didn't get to hear everything he had to say. But I'm paraphrasing, but what he kind of started with was, man, he doesn't really hate on any of these other, hey, I like all this stuff. Let everybody do what they want to do. You just said it here, different strokes for different folks. No Prep Kings might not be for everybody. It's clearly for a lot of people, but but on the flip side, it seems like the people from within traditional drag racing are much more feisty towards the No Prep Kings guys than vice versa. So I guess I just want to hear, like, I've seen you at NMCA events, Chris. I've seen you at Donald Long's events. I've seen you at various events down throughout Texas. Now that we're in the same part of the country, who'd ever thought that would be the case? But like, is that correct that when you look around the sport, you don't see enemies or you don't see classes that you don't like necessarily?
No, of course not. I mean, I like all forms of drag racing. I mean, I'm an NHRA fan. I like watching it. I like watching radio races. I love Donald Long's events. Like, man, I just like anything fast. And I think you're going to find that with most of the guys that race No Prep Kings. Like, they won't hate on any of the other events, as far as they don't dislike them just because it's NHRA. You know what I mean? We all enjoy fast things. I'm pretty much all of us share that same, common thing, that we enjoy fast stuff and stuff that hauls ass.
I'm curious, what do you think is next for No Prep Kings, right? I mean, is it just the continuation of what's going on, or do you have visions, or do you see that? Where do you see this going from here, right? We've got, how many races did you guys, or will you do in 2021?
So it'll be 15 total races for 2021. We just added 2 more.
Yes.
The month of October is going to be crazy, but that'll finish up our 2021 schedule. So 15 races for the year, but the plan is to move forward, add more events, nurture new talent as well. I mean, that's also big on the list, because like we've had the discussion, well, like what Matt Hagan was saying, you can't rely on, one star forever, right? So we're constantly trying to nurture new talent and see who's going to rise to the top, So that's the plan, at least for No Prep Kings, is to continue on, have more events, more money, and just get faster and faster.
What do you make of, there's a lot of talk and kind of curiosity around the process of getting involved with the No Prep Kings show. So say that I'm a big tire, steel roof and quarters, pro mod style car, on the lines of any of these guys that we're seeing running at the front of No Prep Kings right now. What's the process look like for me to get involved with the show?
Yeah, so I mean, there's several classes that are at No Prep Kings events. Obviously, the invitational class is the big event, right? 40,000 to win. That's the one that everyone wants to strive to be to. I mean, you've got 32 drivers out of the entire United States, right? Get to participate in that. So it's like the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, and so on and so forth, right? So what I could say in my recommendation for Wes Buck with his Pro Mod or Steel Roof Steel Recorder car, if you wanted to come participate, I would tell you, Wes, come to one of the events, run Outlaw Big Tire, and figure out a way to set yourself apart. Stand out. You have to stand out, right? I mean, and I can't tell you how you do that. But that's, the first step is going to the event. There's open classes for you to run. Not every class is invitational. Everyone's invited to the open classes we have. I mean, Stevie Fast could come run Outlaw Big Tire if he wanted to. Come on in. We're welcome with open arms, man. Come race. But you show up and you stand out.
I think it's an incredible thing, man, and I see people doing it. I mean, I look at Lyle Barnett put his small tire car in the winner's circle recently. I believe that was in Darlington.
Yep.
The upcoming event is out on the West Coast, and I know there's a whole bunch of small tire guys that are like over the moon to just go throw their hat in the ring and be there and be guilty by association. Is that rewarding for you? And kind of speaking on behalf of the whole Street Outlaws crew, it has to be cool to be the ultimate popular clique. That group of people, those 32 invitational spots, that's really become a real. Matt Hagan talked about winning a Wally. I think that being in that 32 car invitational is encroaching on that kind of status where, hey, you're somebody. Does it make you feel like a proud papa? Does it make your heart swell with pride to see what this has become and people's desire to be a part of it?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I feel, privileged to even be a part of it and be in the position I'm in. And you know what? The rest of those 32 guys should feel the exact same. It's definitely a privilege in my opinion, because you have got thousands of people that want to be in your shoes right then and there. You know what I mean? And there's people knocking on the door ready to replace you at any time. So, for me personally, I am just beside myself that I get to even be a part of it. Don't get me wrong, the days are really long, but just the satisfaction of making it all the way to the end and then handing over, 40 grand and hand over this big trophy that's only one of one for that event. I mean,
right.
It's just, I don't know, man. I get kind of excited just talking about it, but it's just, it's hard to put into words. It's just something very unique that you would have to experience.
When you look at like big tire performance, small tire, and obviously all this stuff happens without the scoreboards on, win lights only, instant green start. If I believe that's correct, right?
Right.
I'm curious, what is I mean, how much does it mean to you to see, or excuse me, I guess that's not the right question. What I want to ask is, how surprised are you by the performance of these cars when you burst onto the scene with your car, which I believe the yellow Mustang, when it first came on the scene, had like maybe a 28 10.5 on it, like a real 10.5.
Yeah.
What are you blown away? I don't know what that car ran back then. I'm assuming somewhere in the 5s in the 8th mile. Now these cars are well down in the mid 4s or faster. I mean, are you stunned by this on an unprepped surface that these cars have gotten so fast?
Yeah, I mean, I can't, I don't know exactly how fast the cars go, but I can tell you just by gauging, because we can gauge within a tenth or two how fast cars are going, and I can tell you they are hauling balls down a no prep track, man. Anyone that says that they will put 5/10 on any of these cars at the top are out in outer space. It's not happening on a no prep. I'm sorry, it's just not. Because these guys are flying.
It's been crazy to watch, to be honest, because I'm going, knowing what these cars run like in other instances or whatever, to see them come close to replicating those performances on no prep surfaces is really impressive. I don't want to dive too deep into this and go like all technical, but talking about the big tire cars, and you have an intense knowledge of all this stuff, is it a matter of like if somebody's coming off a prepped track and they show up to try to run no prep, is it about putting a ton of bite in it, like with the 4-link? Is it a really long bar? Is it, I mean, because it looks to me like it's going to require some wholesale changes to really be competitive.
Yeah, for sure. But it's also going to depend on the track. I mean, we go to the tracks all across the nation, and a good example would be the Darlington surface versus maybe Tucson, right? And they're two completely different surfaces. One, you have a sand pit or sand all around you, and all it takes is one person to drive through the sand, and then it goes all over the track. So now you're sand racing down this surface, right? And so, we're not going to drag it or spray any glue. So it just kind of is what it is. And then, of course, you've got Darlington, right, which is a really smooth, nice surface. I mean, radial guys fly on that surface. So, I think you have to be ready when you show up to have your different bar angles. Like if you're on a Tucson surface, which isn't, has sand and stuff, you might run something more similar to what you would run on the street, right? A little more bite or so on and so forth. Whereas, you get on like a Darlington surface, and if you still have that setup that has a lot of bite, you're probably going to rattle your teeth out, and probably you're going to dump pieces of your car all over the track from tire shake. You know what I mean? So you got to make sure you really have your setups easily changeable depending on what track you go to.
Good information, because I do think that there's a belief that you can show up with one of these cars and be pretty close pretty quick. And I just don't see that being the case. Last question, Boosted, and we will let you go, man. Does the success of all this stuff, and I don't mean to get you in trouble and put you in a precarious situation, but I am curious, with all the success of Street Outlaws, No Prep Kings, does this mean like real street racing for most of these guys is way in the past?
I don't think so. Well, I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but I mean, I can speak for me. I mean, I may or may not have entered a little event a month or so ago in my yellow car. You know what I mean? And I know there's guys that will still do it. I know Dave will still do it. Joe Woods will still do it. There's several guys that will still put their cars out there and race. They don't care. They're street racers at heart. They've been doing it for their whole life, right? So they're not going to let this stuff deter them. They'll do it.
It's like what Big Chief always say, like, hey, if you're street, you're street. Like you can't stop doing that. I actually had a kind of an unfortunate, a really odd conversation with my chiropractor last week. He was asking me about street. He's like, didn't you used to street race? And I'm like, man, it's not something that I can really talk about with a lot of pride or anything, because of my role as an ambassador for the sport of drag racing here and now. But we'd be lying. I mean, drag racing was born on streets. That's where so much of this stuff started. I mean, it's impossible, and I'm not encouraging it or supporting it in any way, shape, or form. However, I'm here to tell you that atmosphere is unlike any other, and I think it's interesting that there are events that are coming close to recreating that. Closing thoughts on these races that are happening on the shutdown. You guys, I don't know that everybody knows this, but your group, the 405, I believe, invented this style of racing I believe at Thunder Valley, back up toward the starting line. We ran a story in the magazine, took a bunch of flack for it, but I thought it was fantastic. This was organized by you, Big Chief, Murder Nova, etc. What do you make of it right now? I mean, are you surprised at all? Because it seems like it's coming on strong and not going anywhere.
Yeah, there's been several events, and they're actually big money events.
Crazy,
like
man.
backwards track. Like, oh my god, I look at it, I'm like, how are they getting this money together? But anyways, it's these big money backwards track events are still there, and you're right. It all started way back in Thunder Valley with Big Mark and those guys, and it was just a new thing for us. It was like, all right, this is pretty cool. It's really slick down here, and we're not on the street, so that kind of sucks, but we're trying to mimic it. This is actually pretty cool. I think we'll continue doing it. And, the guys that are doing it now, I mean, it's very successful. And it really is a suspension tuner's race at that point because, and power management as well. Because I'm going to tell you, at the end of the track, that surface sucks.
That's rough down there, man. There's not a track in the country that I think is really an ideal place to go racing in. They're shut down, man.
It's terrible.
It's cool to see it. I don't know that it completely recreates the environment. I mean, obviously not. You don't have that element of danger and that suspense and that kind of tension in the air. However, it comes pretty close. Dimly lit. They're almost all at night, late at night, right? People crowded down around the water box or whatever. It's a cool thing. And I tip my cap because, I mean, we've got a situation I think is probably near and dear to your heart. I mean, we're about to lose. The state of Texas is about to lose Houston Raceway Park, one of the best known quarter-mile drag strips in the country, a really beloved venue for our sport. And I thought about that from the perspective of illegal street racing. And they are going to have a problem on their hands in a big way, in my opinion, because it's going to hurt. I mean, there are going to be people that are going to be looking for places to race their car, don't want to go to the 8th mile track, don't want to drive to Dallas or whatever. And I just kind of wonder, we're going to see more and more and more of this stuff. And I tip my cap to the Tucson Dragways and to Darlington and Shadyside and all these tracks that are going, you know what? We're actually providing a service in a lot of ways to give these racers an opportunity to do what they like to do in the environment they like to do it, but not on a public roadway.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. I mean, it's almost like it's like the in-between of street and track. You know what I mean? You're still at the track, so you've got the walls and stuff like that. But also, it's very sketchy down there. So, for guys that don't want to put it on the street, and by all means, I don't look down on people that won't do it. I mean, that's your choice. You're welcome to do whatever you want to do. But this is a place where they can, I guess, mimic the street conditions and see how fast they can go down in a safe environment.
It's been cool to see, man, and we appreciate it a lot. Last thing, I lied to you 3 times now.
It's okay.
What kind of feedback do you get from track owner and operators? Because we just had a great comment here on YouTube, just on any thoughts on some of these tracks that are on the verge of closing and whatnot. But what I really want to ask is, how good does it feel? Because a lot of these tracks historically, the only real big events they had were like if they were lucky enough to get an NHRA national event, or if they had like a big 4th of July deal or something like that. But now you got tracks all over the country clamoring for their NPK date. I mean, what's that feel like for you guys, for the whole group? And what kind of feedback do you get from track owner operators when you're there packing their facility with, in many cases, fans that have never been to a drag race before?
Right. Well, first off, I think, these track owners see the success of the No Prep Kings events. I mean, the pictures speak for themselves, right? I mean, I'm sure you see it after every event. There's not an empty seat in the stands. And so track owners see this and they're like, their eyes get all big and they're like, man, this is really a successful thing. We want to have them here. We want our fans, our people that live close to our track to be able to come experience this. So, and I can tell you how it makes me feel standing on the starting line and looking up and just being like, oh my gosh, there's so many people here. And then they stick a microphone in my hand. They're like, all right, talk to them. I'm like, oh, okay, no problem. So then I got to talk to the 10s, 15s, however many thousands of people are there in the stands. And I can tell you the people that are there are just overly excited to be just a part and see it in person. I mean, seeing it on TV and seeing it in person are two, totally different things. And we give the avenue for the fans to be able to do that. And they're overly appreciative.
Well, man, Chris, we appreciate you. Excuse me, Boosted. We got to go by nicknames in this day and age.
It's all good. You can call me Chris. You can call me Chris. It's fine.
Well, we appreciate your time, man. Thank you a lot. Go take care of the little man. I know you just picked him up from school, and we hate to derail your afternoon, but we are eternally grateful for you being a part of this, man, sharing some knowledge with us and giving us some unfiltered commentary. So thank you so much, Chris. I look forward to seeing you soon. I do plan plan on going to the No Prep Kings that's coming up in Ennis in October at the legendary Motorplex here in Dallas, outside of Dallas. So I look forward to seeing you before the year is out, and hopefully our paths cross again soon. Thank you so much, and thanks for watching. Last week you were in here commenting with fans and being a part of the show, so thank you so much for your support, man. We appreciate it a lot.
Thanks, Wes. See ya.
Thanks, brother.
Yep.
All right, fellas, it's almost that time. JT, roll the clip. I think it's after hours time. I think it's time. Holy cow, man. JT, Murder Tundra, Mike Carpenter, welcome to Drag Illustrated After Hours. All of our friends out there on the World Wide Web, thank you guys so much for being a part of this deal for pretty much all afternoon on a Wednesday, which I'm pretty proud of, man. Love this shirt, Murder Tundra. What's that say?
Epstein didn't kill himself.
Dude, you're what a deal, brother. What a deal.
Man.
What a deal, man.
What a show.
Did we crush it again this week?
It's awesome. I love everybody coming on here and just being so real and just being willing to just let it all hang out, like we said. Bruce does a great job. I was actually at that Darlington No Prep Kings event, and I don't know what experience he has on the mic prior to this deal, but I mean, he does a great job, and he's out there all day in the sun, standing out there announcing and kind of being a ringleader. Yeah, that's
JT's getting some kudos in the chat here, so we gotta make sure the world knows. So hey, we have Fran DeVenzo here, man. I actually had I'm making this pitch to Fran. I told him last week that I had a pitch for him, and I'm hoping to head into the last Q4, if you will, of here in 2021 with Tequila Commissario as the official spirit of the Wes Buck Show. That's the hope that moving forward, Tequila Commissario is what we're drinking right now. I'm embarrassed to admit I've got Tito's vodka here on my table, but I will happily throw that in the trash and introduce Tequila Commissario to the drag racing world, because it's the best tequila I've ever had, and Fran's one of my closest friends in the whole world, as well as here in drag racing. It's great to see him on here. I'm hoping that we can get that deal done. It's really been exciting, man. Have you guys? I mean, we can continue talking about Chris and No Prep. I apologize to derail you, Mike, but it's really been great to see the reaction the last few weeks of getting all these guests lined up. It's not without a lot of effort from our group. You know, Dion, Walrath, of course, every week helping us line up guests, doing cut downs. Paige Coughlin lining up guests, shooting out emails. Both of you guys helping us with graphics and all this stuff. It's cool to get this kind of feedback, man.
Yeah, man.
Josh,
Absolutely.
Nate, Caroline, Nancy, it's Blake Fontenelle. We've got it's an amazing thing, I think, that's happening right now. Should we do dinner table? Do you guys want to do dinner table?
I say something real quick where he said, I've been watching a show on Stars called Heels. Have you guys seen it yet?
I heard about it though.
Yeah, it's really good. So it's about this guy in a small town that has kind of a wrestling thing, like a WWF, and it's called Heels because, I guess in wrestling, the bad guy's the heel, the good guy's the face,
baby face. Yep.
Yeah. And you can turn heel. But, that's kind of what he was saying there. And I think Stevie kind of hit on that, when we were talking about characters last week. And, like the producers told him, you can be the boring guy, or you can be the guy that's out here throwing fists, or you can be the guy. But they're going to show that regardless on that show. And we've talked about this before. It's not all about the racing. I think that's where the Street Outlaw shows took off when we were talking about it was that they show the race at the end, but really it was the drama leading up to everything. And I think that's basically what he was saying. I'm sure that all those shows on Bravo or anything else, those people, they're wanting to get into it on air, or they're going to get cut.
They know why they're there. I mean, there's a reason why they got picked or why they're on that show. It's not to be boring. And yeah, I think Boosted really gave us some good insight there on, like you said, what to do if you want to come race No Prep Kings, and just a little more of the process behind the scenes. I think that they intentionally don't publicize that a lot so that so that it's more, I guess, just simple to follow, but some good information there. This kind of it's almost like we answered some questions this week and got some rebuttal or some insight from last week's show, because we had John on last week. He gave his side of the Hagan deal and of his how he views the sport and how it needs to be promoted or how he presents himself. Then we got Hagan's reply today. So I think as we go on, we're actually answering questions. I think Boosta answered some of the questions that Stevie brought up about the No Prep Kings deal. So, really unintentional. I think we would be remiss if we thought that was intentional, but pretty cool how that worked out.
Fran says I got
Fran's beating you up right now.
Like, oh yeah, I've got Corona. I've got a little everything.
Yeah, me and JT got the beer because we don't have any tequila commissary.
Oh, I got hardly. We've got everything in this office. You know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a care package from Fran earlier this week that my wife and I cracked open the other night, and
I've yet to get a care package from Fran.
You know that you can make like a tornado in your beer to chug it faster.
What?
Yeah, so I think I can do it. I don't know. Let's see.
What is happening?
He works on this. This is what he does. Is
this what you did?
Hours.
You just flip it just a little bit and makes a tornado in there. Shoots air down it.
Let me ask you the same question that I asked John Force last week.
After
all these successes, John, JT, after all this partying, JT, what I would say you're 40 something, your early 40s maybe. You've been partying since you were 12, I'd say 13. Did you ever think almost 3 decades into your partying career that you would learn something new about chugging a beer?
I didn't, and I figured it out, or I saw it at the Ozarks, and I was like, why have I never thought of that? I mean, I even have little devices that go over the top of them that shove air down in them, or
we're really proud of you, JT. I mean,
Huh?
always researching and improving your craft. You test like beer drinking the way drag racers go to test new parts and
absolutely
you need
perfect their operation.
Next time you're down here, we should go over to Frankenstein Engine Dynamics or go to Rear Morrison and ask them to use their flow bench to just do some testing on how to more quickly get beer out of bottles so that, just to help you out as you move forward.
Is that a Venturi? I think that's like a Venturi effect, like a carburetor. Let's tie it in. Let's tie it into some racing.
I'm curious, highs and lows. You guys know I do this almost every night with my family. Let's just do highs and lows of like the racing season the last couple of weeks. We've had a lot of cool stuff go on. One thing that I feel has been lacking, we haven't had as much talk about like radial tire racing is, we're a few weeks away from No Mercy 12, Donald Long's big fall production down at South Georgia Motorsports Park. I mean, what's some highs or some things that you're looking forward to with a lot of anticipation as we head into the fall? We talked a lot about the countdown to the championship. Obviously, it kicks off this weekend at the NHRA US Nationals. We've got a slew of No Prep Kings races left to have. We've got the PDRA's final push, the Midwest Drag Racing Series final push. The NMCA just had a great race this past weekend in Norwalk. When you look forward to the next couple of months, I mean, it's hard to believe it's September. It's September 1st, man. What are you guys most excited about here in the next 2 months, September and October, when it comes to drag racing?
Go for it, Keith.
Go ahead, Mike. Yeah, I hate this is like
I'm trying to give you an opportunity here.
No,
Not
ahead.
really. I mean, to me, drag racing doesn't start until September, October. I mean, these are the months to really get after it. Early season, but then the summer is just grueling for everybody. I agree with series that take the summer off. I really do. A lot of the local series here in the Carolinas do that. I think that's something that's catching on outside of the national touring series because it's just brutal to race in conditions in late August. But really, I always love September and October. I mean, Indy this weekend. How can you look past that? But I think we haven't talked a lot about radial racing lately. We've been talking about No Prep Kings. We've been talking about the NHRA Pro Mod situation, the fuel racing. Why is that? What do you think is the situation with radial racing, and what are we going to see from that going into the fall when those guys typically the home run hitters come out?
I think it's a lot of things, but I think right now maybe we are missing some of the characters that we've talked about this before, of course. But some of the characters that we've had in Radio versus World and the cars, and it's getting so expensive to run it. And I mean, the car count isn't near what it used to be. Everybody used to go at it on the internet between races. I mean, literally go at it all day long. And there was days where we'd sit here and read back and forth on the comments where you could hardly get anything done. You'd read through it all, But that made it interesting for everybody else to partake in the conversation, basically, So you picked a side. You picked a guy you were going to go with, and then you wanted to see that matchup. So I think
the focus for me, if I really take an honest approach to it and I try to like give you guys exactly how I feel about it, I think it's just it evolved so fast, man. It was not that long ago that we were like jumping up and down about Kevin Mullins going 411 in a radial tire car, losing our minds, right? It wasn't too long after that we were jumping up and down about, the first ever 3-second pass threes in the freeze in Memphis, and Brad Edwards' big, much, extremely controversial 3-second pass at Huntsville Dragway. And it went from there to like 340s, right? I mean, it went so fast. It happened so fast, that evolution, that you typically just don't see that. I mean, it normally takes longer for it to get that far gone. And I guess when I look at it now, I'm going, the last really big significant thing that I can personally remember, like off the top of my head, was like Daniel Ferris's run, right? How long ago has that been when he set the ET record in radial versus the world? And I felt like there was and this is I'm not trying to be like confrontational or whatever, or controversial, but it felt like that was as big of a moment as that was, right? As huge as it was, it felt like a bit of a balloon bursting. Like, holy crap, we have radial cars running 340s, right? Where do we go from here? And I think this is proof positive of the point we make right here a whole lot, that when so much of your show and so much of the, I guess, entertainment value hinges on the numbers on the scoreboard, eventually you're going to run out. Yeah. Physics are going to come into play, right? You can't go much faster.
Yeah, it's unsustainable.
It's unsustainable. And if that's the focus, it's going to at some point be a problem.
It's also, I think we're almost having a little bit of a backlash against the over prep and the fact that radial cars can only run under extremely specific conditions, and especially to run those record numbers. I mean, it's basically record run or spinning the tires and moving 2 inches. That's where radial racing has gotten. And I think that No Prep Kings, I think, any slick tire racing, we're seeing, I've been monitoring the comments throughout the show. We're seeing a ton of comments about the prep and about, man, I'm tired of all the prep and the specific conditions. We want to see these guys race in a variety of conditions. So maybe it's a little bit of a blowback from that. But Tyler Crossnose event, Shakedown in Virginia, coming up in a couple of weeks. That's a great event. We ran that the last couple of years. That was probably my favorite event that we raced the last couple of years. And you got to see the really kind of a magic show by Tyler and his guys to prep that track for radial racing and then flip it back to slick tire racing.
That's a conversation we should have.
And have it be awesome for both combinations.
Save that one for a second.
Okay.
Tundra. We got to bring that back up. Murder. Save Fran's comment for 2 seconds.
Okay.
Do you think the prep thing? Lyle Barnett was joined us here a few weeks ago. I'm curious what you guys think. He suggested that maybe radial racing, we need to treat it more like just acknowledge that it's seasonal, right? Like it's a seasonal thing. We're going to run an event in February. We're going to run an event in October or whatever. And those are the two radial events that happen. The problem becomes, where do those cars operate between those two events? And that's why I don't know that there's as big. They don't. And that's something
it's more of that specialization. Like we started talking the
problematic.
Where
it's super problematic.
Guys, if you want to go run Donald's 2 races or 3 races a year and that's your focus, go for it. I think you just have to be intentional about that. And if you want to go run Midwest Pro Mod or whatever, don't think you're going to be able to run your car at every series. And I think that these smaller series are able to, they've ascended to the point where that makes sense. You don't have to build a car that can race everywhere. It's okay to build one that's very specific, but just realize that, and then don't try to have a race in July.
What I'm hoping to see from radial racing is an effort. I don't know exactly what it looks like, to be honest. I'm not completely sure how it works out, but I think there needs to be an effort because I'm here to tell you, like, what Donald Long has accomplished with radial racing, it's hard. You cannot argue against it. Like, I don't care how you feel about his style. I mean, it's obvious he's obviously kind of a classic promoter in the controversy sells, and he's rough around the edges. And having known Donald for a long time, like personally, I know that he's really not like that at all, away from the racetrack or away from his shtick as the Duck, right? However, I wonder, like, moving forward, if there's going to have to be like a renewed energy or a renewed commitment to the radials versus the world thing, because I think what RVW became over the course of the last several years was, it really, the versus the world thing was just, it was a remnant of a bygone era, right? Like, there was
it was a way for them to get attention.
It was
like, we're going to take on all comers. These radials can stand with anything that's out there.
And
I
then
think
it became like, well, we're
right.
building an RVW car,
right.
which Donald, I think, would tell us, and I believe he has on past episodes of the show, that like that category, RVW, was never meant to be like an eliminator. It was never meant to be pro stock or pro mod. It was supposed to be like an annual freak show, a come one, come all tough man contest of sorts. And I think it evolved rapidly into a standalone category of drag racing where people were building cars that fit that specific rule set. And I think if he's looking for an encore, if there's a desire from the masses to kind of see this continue, because I got to be honest, like, I understand that it's a very polarizing conversation, and there's this atmosphere that exists in our sports where there's a lot of us versus them, and I hate that stuff. I really, a high tide lifts.
That's kind of what Alex was talking about with the
Top
Fuel and the door car stuff. It's like two different cults, and you can't cross over.
And you can't, like,
this goes back to what we were talking about just a little bit ago, though. Like, you know, the faces and the heels. You know, Donald it's never bothered him to be the heel. You know, if you're going to be talking bad about him, you're going to be talking about radio versus world or radio racing, period. You're actually,
it absolutely serves his purpose.
His old YouTube videos that he used to put out, you know, him and Linko Jim. I mean, those were epic. You got to admit. I mean, no doubt, everybody. How they called you out, Wes, one time.
Consistently for quite a while, you know. And it was, for me, I just look at it as like, what's the second act? Because I would like everybody that likes to bag on Donald to, like, close your eyes for a moment and imagine our sport without him, right? And without all that he has done. I mean, it's not been that long ago that drag radial as an eliminator was like a class filler at the World Street Nationals. It was parked on the grass. You were there to occupy time. You were there to fill time. Now, radial racers are amongst our sport's biggest stars. They're amongst the highest paid stars that exist in our sport. I mean, you got guys like Mark Mickey racing for $100,000. I mean, it's incredible, the ascension of radial racing. And I'd like everybody to kind of take a deep breath and go, hey, I may not love all the things he says and his willingness to stir the pot and whatnot, and maybe I wish he was more polished, whatever. No matter how you feel about it, you cannot discount what he's done for the sport of drag racing and what he's done for door car racing specifically, radio racing specifically. And I guess for me, when I look forward and I start thinking about what's the second act, right? Like, what's the spinoff or whatever, I really think there's got to be an effort to bring some of these NMCA Extreme Pro Mod guys to No Mercy once a year. Bring these PDRA Pro Boost, Pro Nitrous guys to No Mercy once a year, or to Lights Out once a year. What has to be done? Is it a series of phone calls? Is it making qualifying money better? What has to be done? Because I think it's time to start asking those questions, because how can we ensure that at Lights Out next year that you've got Johnny Camp, front runner in the PDRA, trying his hand at radial versus the world? How can we ensure that we have more Kevin Rivenbarks, guys that were willing to have a radial setup, have a big tire and bars set up, and be willing to play on both sides of the field there a little bit, if you will? That's what I feel is kind of like the next frontier, is if we can identify that it takes a special track, let's just call a spade. It takes a special track to run radials. It takes a special setup to run radials. And we're going to do it a handful of times a year for a ton of money. And we're going to do everything in our power to bring these big players from other segments of the sport out once a year and bring it back to being radial versus the world. We want to invite everybody down here to try their hand against the baddest guys in the country. I really think that The only way it continues the way we know it is to try to figure that out somehow, some way.
Yep.
Tyler, they did something similar, or competed against each other at the shakedown.
They did, yeah. What, 2 years ago? Was it 2 years ago, or did they do it again this year?
Just last year, yeah.
Last
it was,
year.
and it was. I mean, I think it was incredible how well the competition. And I'm saying maybe you say that, like, hey guys, you're not going to be able to run your big tire setup. Like, you're going to have a radial kit in a box. And I'm surprised I'm not seeing this more from chassis builders, because I honestly feel like if I'm building a pro mod for somebody right now, if Fletcher Cox, for instance, or some really well-resourced gentleman calls me up and wants me to build a car for them, I think I'm putting on the invoice like, hey, we're going to give you the car with big tires and bars. We're going to give you that setup, but we're going to put in a really badass crate that's got our logo on it or whatever. Like, have you ever been around one of these late model Dodge Demons or Hellcats or whatever? In the trunk, they've got like a crate that's all branded badass, that's got your slicks, your front runners, a jack. I'm not saying you need to go that route, but something along those lines that's like, here's your radials, here's the shocks you need for your radials, here's the 4-link bars you need to run radials, whatever, and here's a kit that's going to allow you to swap over every once in a while. And maybe that's a pipe dream, but that's, in my opinion, that's he's going to have to make the qualifying money really big, and he's going to have to make the payout really big, because I see Scott Klinger in the comments here. I mean, we faced that ourselves, right? At the World Series of Pro Mod, we did a no entry fee, 100,000 to win, winner take all shootout 3 years in a row, but it still wasn't enticing enough for people to completely change their setup for one race a year. So it's a unique challenge, man. I'm not saying it's easy.
I agree. Let's go back to this.
Yeah, let's go back to Fran. This is something that we didn't get to talk about that much. Not as much as I felt like we wanted to, Mike, last week. Fran Vivenzo, one of our dear friends, longtime friend of Drag Illustrated, we like to call him Fodies. I am sending a bitch. I attended Brainerd, and I feel for the fans who are expecting many more cars. 7 pro mods, 3 alcohol funny cars, limited number of top fuel cars, listed nitro motorcycles on the pre-race stuff. None were there. A lot of money for not a real national race.
What happened with the motorcycle deal? That's the first I've heard of that. Like that they were promoting it and it didn't happen.
That's news to me, but I will be, and I don't mean to pile on. I don't want to pile on, but when I looked at that event from afar and I saw the entry list and I saw the run order or the run sheets and stuff, I did. It felt like a low moment, kind of. It took the wind out of my sails a little bit, because I just felt like the fans there in Brainerd are amongst the most hardcore that exist in our country, and I just felt they deserved better than that. And I don't know. I mean, this could take us 10 hours to break down, but I think we would be lying if we didn't acknowledge that was a tough moment that the NHRA cannot let happen. You can't let that happen.
Your star's got to be there.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless. I mean, that's what people are coming to see, So
what's the solution, Mike?
I think we actually touched on this, I think, last week.
Yeah.
I think the solution is to embrace that event as, hey, every car's not going to be here. Every class is not going to be here, but we're going to put on a hell of a show. Maybe throw some jet cars in there, some wheel standers, add some classes, they added Mountain Motor Pro Stock to that event, I think, to try to bolster the car count. We've got the zoo. This is an awesome facility. It has all these unique things, a lot like Denver. I think Denver has to approach their race that way. Any of these places that, for one reason or another, are outside the norm, I think approach it more as an exhibition. And then when you go to Indy, we've got every class known to man and every car that runs those classes coming. Charlotte, the race is where everybody comes out. But Dallas.
Scott Klinger throws out here double points. I will tell you that's a go-to. That's like an old promoter's trick, right? I mean, if you want to make sure your local racers come out to a certain event, put a double points race on.
Well,
man.
I'm just looking at it from a fan's perspective. How can I get fans in the stands? And double points may get the racers there, but is getting all the racers there getting the fans there? But if I put on a concert,
it would help though.
Yeah, it would help. But what if I promoted a concert with like a B or C level musician, wheel stander, jet cars, and come get crazy in the zoo? that might get as many fans as a full car count and double points.
I'm
It's
sold.
just what do you want to do? Yeah, that's the JT event, or do you want to have the the standard NHRA event? To me, I think NHRA has plenty of races that are by the book, predictable, whatever. I would embrace that zoo deal. I would be like, this deal, we don't know what's going to happen here. This is our craziest race of the year. Promote it that way.
I wonder
Because they
if
need some of that variety.
it could be. I keep going back to like having a thrill show,
Mhm.
like maybe recognizing that, hey, we're not able to run one of our highly competitive traditional events at certain venues. We've had feedback from a slew of our racers that we race too frequently. Right. So maybe there is an opportunity to switch over to like certain events. And I know this is probably going to be a tough sell for a lot of these tracks that are used to having traditional events, but I do wonder if that's not a great idea, Mike, to introduce like a nitro night or whatever, which is a condensed show, which is more of a booked in promotion, where instead of having Top Fuel and Funny Car, you say, hey, we're going to book in 8 Top Fuel cars. We're going to book in 8 funny cars and a band, a bikini contest, a car show.
That's
go a different way.
Yeah, that's been going on since the beginning of time, and these other series have had to embrace it. You've got the Haltech World Finals, or these bike races. The posters are more like girls in bikinis and other crazy stuff, not the actual racing. So I can remember the Super Chevy days. You name it. If it wasn't NHRA, you had to do stuff like that. So I think it's time to embrace that.
Part of me thinks it would be, I had a vision one time, and that sounded like really creepy. That's not what I meant, but I meant like I had imagined, I didn't like see a mirage, or I wasn't, it wasn't like a religious experience, but I just was, I was thinking about a moment, or what if the NHRA had their marquee events, and maybe it becomes 16 races, maybe it becomes 12, or maybe it becomes whatever, 18 we see to be a really effective number for the pro stock teams. But then those events, that series was complemented by a series of either scaled down or kind of different, more entertainment focused events, where you had a couple of, maybe Steve Torrance doesn't go to those events, but Alex Laughlin does, right? And it gives these guys an opportunity to kind of develop a local fan base, develop some following, not have to compete for attention with a bunch of other people that have much, much more evolved programs, and give them an opportunity to like go out, sell some merch, and kind of build a name for themselves, like drag race, like happened back in the day, right? But also learn to be a pro racer, right?
Exactly.
Like learn the ropes and not have to go do that.
This is another correlation to, let's nerd out on some pro wrestling. It's a house show. You ever been to a house show or heard of a house show?
Yep.
WWE, they have house shows. They tour around the country at these smaller arenas.
And they're bad.
Non-televised show, and that's where guys build their wrestling skills. They build their character. It gives the promoters and producers time to see how these guys perform. It's kind of like preseason football. And then, oh man, that guy, there's something about this guy. Let's take him up. Then he might get on Thursday night SmackDown. I don't even follow it anymore. But it used to be like, Sunday morning, I think, was the next thing, like Sunday morning wrestling or something. And then you might get up to Thursday SmackDown. Then you might get up to WCW Raw on Monday night. Then you might get up to a pay-per-view.
I saw The Rock with his microphone had a cord on it.
Oh, yeah, I've been to a house show when I was 15 years old or 16 years old. I've been to a house show somewhere here in Charlotte. I went to ECW events back in the day, saw Rob Van Dam and like a bunch of people that eventually made it onto the big stage in ECW or WCW or WWF. That's a lot of W's.
I mean, the NBA, and this is a more of a stretch because of the economy that exists within the NBA, but they've got the G League, right? Mm-hmm. There's the Euro League. There's the Big Three that Ice Cube has put together. I actually found a new basketball thing earlier this summer, the basketball tournament, which paid like $1 million to the winner. And I don't know where these players come from or whatever, but I do think our sport, this may, to quote Paul Lee, a longtime supporter of Drag Illustrated through McLeod Clutches, and now most recently as well with McLeod and FTI Performance. He's fighting to get into the top 10 to get a clinch a playoff berth. I'm sure he's feeling a lot of pressure headed into this weekend, but he told me that at their business, Paul said that he doesn't like to use the phrase problem. He likes to use the word opportunity, because every one of these problems or issues that you encounter, there's typically an opportunity somewhere to be had. And I wonder if there's not an opportunity for the NHRA to develop a house show.
Well, those house shows are a revenue stream for WWE. They can, whatever the arrangement is with the arena, whatever the concession deal is, whatever the merch.
I'm sure they have a sponsor maybe for that series.
So it's not on TV, but I bought a ticket to it and I bought some shirts and stuff or whatever. So they're making money, and it's just like it's being real with what you have to work with and what this show, be able to think ahead. What's this show going to look like? Like you Brainerd, what's it going to look like when we have 7 Pro Mods and 7 funny cars or Top Fuel cars, whatever it was? Should we alter the format a little bit? Should we do something? Or should we just have this horrible looking eliminations ladder when it comes out?
I hate it for the track owners, because I know how much pressure they feel to if you watch any of those shows or listen to the NHRA TV broadcast, there's an ongoing effort to sell tickets to next year's event. Mm-hmm. Get your tickets now, right? Like pre-sale or whatever discount. there's so much effort that goes into selling next year's tickets. And I can't imagine how someone would feel going, I can't even feel good about selling this. How can you scream and yell at the crowd to buy tickets for next year when you're clearly, without question, giving them a subpar show? And and everybody can
it's not subpar if you're honest about it. Like, hey, this is a house show, or this is a whatever you want to brand it as and sell it as such. Then you can be confident selling it. And you can be confident that the fans know what they're getting into. But if you sell it as hey, this is as big as Indy, and then
you've got a problem.
It's not, that's where the issue arises.
But I think that's what they're tasked with, because I think, over the course of time, wasn't Brainerd 2 years ago one of the baddest ass races they had? There was a bunch of records set.
I feel like we're bagging on Brainerd. No, I think Brainerd has a ton of redeeming qualities, but I'm
just saying that the fans have seen a big show. Too. Yeah. No, but you know what I'm saying? The fans have seen a traditional NHRA show in Brainerd. They've seen a traditional NHRA show in Denver. And I think it's hard when you roll in there this time and say hey, we promise eventually it's going to get back to what it used to be, because I honestly don't know that you can blame it. I get tired of, I don't know that there's anything that's going to happen with the presidency, anything that's going to happen with the economy, anything that's going to happen with COVID that's going to dramatically change the situation. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
There's nothing that's going to happen that's going to dramatically change it. We've got to try something.
You said this a couple of weeks ago whenever we started talking about this. Just have a little bit of foresight or a little bit of intuition about what's going to happen. Be on the phone with these guys. Hey, you coming to Brainerd? Nah, man, I can't. I blew my shit up, and or whatever. Or I can't travel that far. Hey, cool. That's no problem. We'll see you at Indy. We'll see you in Charlotte. But at least and then alter your game plan. That's what we would do, right, Wes?
How much time was spent on the phone for races that we've had? We knew,
my Lord.
We knew why people weren't coming, or if they weren't coming, or if they just didn't return calls, whatever. But at least the effort was there to figure out, who we had, how many we had.
Did we need to change anything?
Because we were wanting to put on a show, for sure.
Do we need to add classes? Do we need to change stuff just based on being communication? So I don't know what the answer is really.
I really think that I honestly think you hit the nail on the head, Mike. That the concept of a house show, I really do. I think that is a concept that is just. Don't you think it's part of the reality that we're facing?
It is. You have to adapt.
Anybody going to build? Who's building a nitro car right now? Right. Seriously. Who's how many? Are there 10 teams that are going to come out of the woodwork in the next 3 to 5 years to race funny car and Top Fuel? Both? No. I don't think so. I'm sorry. I hate to be that guy, and I'm not. Everybody knows me as this endlessly optimistic person, and I'm not at all trying to be negative. I'm just trying to be real and recognize that, hey man, the writing's on the wall that this type of racing is absurdly expensive. I think it could be argued that it's very dangerous. We either have to make wholesale changes to the class, make it cost less and the cars slower, and hope that that's enough, or we're going to have to recognize that, like, man, there's just not enough of these guys and gals that are willing to invest at this level. There's just not the support required. I mean, it becomes an inventory problem at some point. That's where we're at right now. And if you've got full fields of cars that'll go to 16 or 18 races, great. Do that. And like you said, use this as an opportunity to develop a feeder series or a secondary function, a secondary program where guys can earn their stripes, learn how to race a nitro car at a high level and not have to compete against John Force or Matt Hagan, right? Maybe have a chance at going a couple of rounds or winning the damn race. I mean, I think that
I think that these other
last
series
night on the Power Hour, the NHRA may have been, sorry, I just want to spit this out. NHRA may have been at its strongest when the IHRA was at its strongest.
That's a great statement. And you know what? These other series that we've talked about, No Prep Kings, Midwest Pro Mod, PDRA, I mean, you name it. There's tons, and I don't want to leave any out, but they're strong right now. And why are they strong? Because they're filling the void that's left. They're filling that area that we're talking about right now. It's just a natural progression. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's smart on those guys' part to embrace that and see a little bit of a market opportunity and jump in there and do it. So that it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning of the show too, where you're not building a car and maybe go run an NHRA Pro Mod race. It's because these other series are strong enough.
If you treat your performers like shit, eventually your performers aren't gonna work for you.
Let's address this question here. I keep seeing this question over and over in the comments, and it's a good chance for us to maybe share a little bit of insight based on our conversations with the Flow Racing people. We have a great relationship with Flow Racing. And what's the answer to this question, Wes? Why can't Flow Racing offer individual race packages?
I believe that they just feel that it defies the business model, right? I mean, the business model is much like, it's probably the same reason Netflix doesn't allow you just to rent a movie, right? I mean, I think that the business model, the revenue required to do this stuff, it requires cash flow, right? And I just think
investment from you.
It requires an investment, and I think that it's some realities. It's just some realities of life. I think that Netflix would probably struggle if their whole model was built around hoping that some people chose to pay the $14.99 a month or whatever, but they're mainly they were at the whim. What it is and this is a conversation, and I don't mean to be like too transparent here because I really feel like I've had some great conversations with the people at Flow Racing, and I'm excited about being more deeply involved with what they do as we head into the future. I think there's some exciting stuff that's about to happen between our companies, but there aren't enough big races. I mean, there just aren't enough. Like, Netflix could probably pull it off, maybe not right now because of COVID, but I mean, there's blockbuster movies coming out all the time, or there were before COVID. So maybe they could do it. The UFC, as a pay-per-view example, there's tons of big fights, right? There's tons, but even the UFC kind of forewent pay-per-view revenue to go to a more consistent model, partnering with ESPN,
to expose their product to more people.
There's not enough big races.
Flow Racing talked about with us is if someone that signs up because they just want to see the shakedown or whatever, and then they happen to get hooked on NMCA, or then they get hooked on some sprint car racing or whatever, it's opening you to new things. Just like on Netflix, you may join because you want to see whatever their latest film that they created is, but then all of a sudden you get hooked into a documentary or whatever, and that's what they want you to do. And it's kind of like just having less turnover. If you just came and went every day, you signed up for 3 hours to watch a 3-hour race and then canceled your subscription and then came back a couple days later, all of this admin, all of this work that is generated whenever you do that transaction, they are trying to avoid that as well. So,
and drag racing has to shoulder some responsibility. I get it.
I get you want to just pay for one race.
Same, because you only care about that one race.
But still, if you care about it that much, $150 to watch it endlessly for like 5 days.
Have you bought a hotel room lately? Yeah, exactly. I actually was working on some like a presentation, a deck for one of our advertising partners here on the show, and I thought about including a reference to how much money Drag Illustrated spends traveling to races annually. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say that number out loud. It's shocking. I mean, it like the amount of money that's spent by our company going to PDRA races, going to NMCA races, going to Midwest races,
throw in trade show
PRI,
on top of
SEMA.
that. Throw in,
I mean, I'm talking like
your
six
shop.
digits, guys.
Yeah.
I'm talking like 6 digits spent annually going to races. So when I look at the opportunity to like watch it for $150, not have to buy a hotel, not have to get on a plane, not have to drive somewhere, for me, it's an incredibly small investment that really changes the drag racing economy. Right? Like, because what Flow Racing, and I don't mean to put words in their mouth, but they're part of their mission statement is like, how can we help promoters make more money so that they'll put on more races? Because they recognize that when there's no money to be made, or like relatively small amounts of money to be made, no one really has a big incentive to do more races. They need promoters making money.
They're investing in the industry. They're investing in promoters. They're investing in the people who make their livelihood, putting on these events that you want to see. So, I get it. Everyone's in a different position. I'm not saying $150 is nothing to sneeze at, but think of it as your contribution to the sport and to getting the content that you want to see.
And we do have to shoulder some responsibility for the fact that there just aren't enough major events. I mean, if you talk to those people, I mean, there are a handful of events that really move the needle for them, right? It's Donald Long's Productions, it's the Sweet 16, it's Lights Out, it's Jason Miller's World Cup Finals, right? It's the Shakedown. It's these big events that they need. The World Door Slammer Nationals, they need those big events. And if they were reliant on, how many did I just name? 3, 4. Let's say how many really are there? I don't know that there's 10 like pay-per-view worthy event. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to. Is there? I don't know that there is. And that
are depending who you are and what you're following.
Yes,
right?
Agreed.
Yeah. So,
but I think that that would not be a sustainable business model for Flow Racing, and it certainly wouldn't allow them to do for our industry what they do. I said this last week, but it's worth repeating. Like, one of the biggest victories for us at Drag Illustrated was to get a check from Flow Racing, right? For putting on an event, for the right to broadcast the World Door Slammer Nationals. That was it was a really proud moment for me, because they saw value in what we do and the show that we put on. And I'll never, ever forget that moment. And I hope a lot of promoters get to feel that moment. And I know the only way it happens is if there's tens, if not hundreds of thousands of subscribers to Flow Racing. So the more successful Flow Racing is the more successful the sport of drag racing is.
We're kind of sensitive to it, right? Because we wouldn't want you to just buy the one copy of the magazine that you want per year or something, if that's your thing. Mm-hmm. We want you to subscribe. We want you to get invested in what we're doing and see, maybe you signed up for some pro mod coverage, but then you get hooked on some, stick shift nationals coverage or something. I mean, and so it's the same thing. It's you guys support us in what we do with the magazine, and then it's kind of the same model with Flow Racing. So I just think that that's a common question that I see a lot on here.
And I do want to give kudos to, like, there are venues that still exist. Like NC Promoter is on here. Jay is an incredibly great human being. He does a tremendous amount. And I'll be honest, like, he helps me. Like, I genuinely feel connected to a lot of these events on the East Coast that I'm not able. It's just not realistic.
We couldn't see a lot of these smaller events. Big Dog, one of my favorite series, Big Dog, which is coming up this Saturday. And I know Jay will be there, and we can check out his coverage from there. Carolina Extreme this past weekend.
Northeast Outlaw Pro Mods.
So
I never would have got to see that final.
Right.
There's
he's
no
finding
real way.
his niche in this deal as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's a great thing, and I'm glad there are people doing this. And I know there's some, them versus us that goes on in the country or whatnot. JT, screenshot that, will you? I'm going to send that to the Flow. I'll do it. I'm going to send it to the Flow people right now.
Smile.
Smile, everybody. Hold on. I'm going to screenshot this bad boy. That's a good one. But seriously, I just really, I'm thankful, man. I'm thankful that there are times, and I think we could have an argument about, the downside of it or the other side of it. But I will tell you that I'm very thankful for Flow Racing, Motor Mania, Bang Shift. I mean, so many of these races, we just want to get to see Mav TV. I mean, we're leaving them out. Obviously, Jay and NC Pro Moder. There's a bunch of them, right? People that go live and let us see what's going on at the racetrack when we're not able to be there. I think Flow Racing is the industry leader in it. They're trying to do something that's fantastic for the sport of drag racing. I don't think we can ask all these independent content creators to I mean, the last thing we don't want to create a scenario where the Jay Warrens of the world are having to pay, right, to come film this. I mean, we have to be careful what we wish for a little bit, right? And I'm glad that Flow's here and there's somebody that's trying to put drag racing in front of an ever-growing audience, because that's what we need, is more and more eyeballs, man. It really is. All right, last thing, and we're going to shut this deal down. I think Alicia's doing the hand face on hand thing because of our photo op right there. A couple of things.
She just we're running over time.
Yeah, well, so huge shout out right quick. Ozzy and Gabby, GRS Motorsports World Sport Compact Finals coming up in Orlando. 11 years. I mean, that event takes on a life of its own. I've been told over 50,000 people show up for that deal. Shakedown is coming up. I'm actually I'd like to go to that event. I'm excited for what Tyler and the team there at Virginia Motorsports Park are doing. What else? What else are we talking about? Big Shot this weekend. Big Dog this weekend.
Big Shift Nationals.
Yeah, check out the newest issue. Just went live. It's in there.
Yeah, JT, throw in Todd. Check out dragillustrated.com. What else? Last thing, closing thoughts. What are you most excited about for Indy? Or no, favorite memory from Indy, and then we're hanging up.
My favorite moment from Indy?
Favorite memory. We didn't really get to labor over it at the beginning.
Well, I mean, it would have to be last year. I've only been to Indy a handful of times. It's always been special. I think the first time I went was 2007. I've been there for other events a lot with my dad growing up, but never for the U.S. Nationals until I was an adult. And you can just tell it's something special as soon as you walk through the door. But just a lot of positive energy last year, a lot of cool moments, and just the stuff that we got to do with Eric Trump and Donald Trump that we talked about to open the show.
Murder, I know you've only been to Indy for a race a handful of times, but you've got a lot of Indy memories, I'm sure. Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, Indy's just awesome. I mean, PRI and the Indy 500 and Nitro Alley, Brownsburg. I've been to John Force's shop there. I mean, Indy's just a cool place, really. I mean, it's most.
I forgot about that. I forgot about the John Force tour. Oh man, we used
to send our magazines.
Yeah, they used to shout out to John Force Racing.
Yeah, and then we'd pick them up in the truck, the day before the trade show, and then haul them over to the trade show. But it was pretty awesome though.
Classic days. We've got some funny stories. We have to do an after hours to tell some of the stories. We've got a really good one. I would love to have had John here when he was on.
There's no chance that John Force knew that we were having our magazines shipped by truck to his shop. We just did it.
I'm pretty sure they did.
They found out about it.
Yeah, they found out.
We found out about it. That's part of the story. Maybe we'll do it next week. Maybe we'll tell that story next week.
Well, man, I got to tell you guys, I'm looking forward to hopefully making some memories this weekend. I think it's been, John Force was calling it on the TV show, and everybody wants to see that place packed to the gills this weekend. I'm hoping to see a little bit of Indy of old is kind of what I'm anticipating. I've never subscribed to the belief system that NHRA's the NHRA US Nationals has lost its luster. I've heard that before, but in my opinion, the magic is as strong today as it has ever been. If you've driven your car on that asphalt stretch of road between those two chain link fences and pulled into Lucas Oil Raceway at Indianapolis, you know what I mean. It's a special place. There's Brian Lone said this last night, and it really struck a chord with me. I got goosebumps as I'm about to paraphrase, but there's 900 plus, nearly 1,000 people who've towed from all points of the country to do battle on a legendary stretch of concrete and asphalt this weekend outside of downtown Indianapolis. And I'm so thankful to all those people, everybody that has fought the good fight to get to the drag strip. Those of us here on this show, everybody involved with this project, we respect that more than many know. We've done it ourselves. We've put up the awnings. We've gone without sleep. We've fought those battles, left with a mad wife in the driveway or what have you, as we headed off to the racetrack, man. And I just am so grateful for all the people that are going to be in Indy this weekend, for all the people that make our sport great. I've said many times, 300 miles an hour on the scoreboard, header flames, all that stuff, really loud cars, that may bring you out to the drag strip. But what I believe brings you back are the people. I get halfway choked up about it, man. I believe the greatest people that exist in the world are part of the drag racing community. And I can't wait to see a whole bunch of them. For all of you that replied to my weekly email this week, thank you. I sent out an email Monday asking people, hey, if you're going to be there, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. If you didn't get that email, log on to dragillustrated.com and make sure you subscribe to our email newsletter so we can stay in touch with you outside of the confines of social media. If you did reply to my message, look forward to a note from me in the next couple of days as I figure out where I can get us all together during the U.S. Nationals. And if you're going this weekend, please shoot me a text, shoot me an email, shoot me a message on Facebook, Wes@dragillustrated.com. I'd love to connect, shake hands, whatever, share a couple of drag racing stories, and head off throughout the pits. So thank you guys so much. Until next week, stage shallow, say your prayers, and we'll see you at the drag strip, guys. Thank you.